Chapter 1247, Enrichment of the Soul. Esteemed Hall Master, what could be more important than devouring the sea goddess soul? Why do you want to leave? Are you no longer planning on devouring her soul? Jian-Chen asked with a smirk. His voice was filled with sarcasm as he looked at the Hall Master's soul. If the Hall Master's real body had been present, Jian-Chen obviously would not lay his hands on him, but unfortunately for the Hall Master, only his soul was here. It was evident that Jian-Chen could not stop the clone outside, but it was his sea of consciousness here. It was his territory, so the Hall Master naturally could not cause any trouble. Just the azulate sword spirits were enough to heavily injure him. The Hall Master no longer spoke to Jian-Chen. The horror of the sword spirits behind him had peaked, so he immediately tried to make his way around the saint artifact in front of him and fled as quickly as he could. However, right when he moved, the saint artifact reappeared in front of him with a flash of golden light, stopping him from retreating. The Hall Master did not give up. He tried to make his way around the tower through various routes many times, but the outcome was still the same. He was stopped by the saint artifact every time. No matter how fast he was in Jian-Chen's sea of consciousness, he would still not be able to speed past the saint artifact. The Hall Master was both flustered and furious. He knew that Jian-Chen was secretly behind everything and that Jian-Chen did not want him to leave. Jian-Chen wanted to wipe out his strand of soul here. Jian-Chen, how dare you attempt a sneak attack against me? The Hall Master bellowed as his face became pale white. He had never thought that he would fail such an easy task in such a miserable fashion. As it turned out, Jian-Chen, who had just been a sitting duck, was more complicated than he had imagined, forcing him into such a horrible situation. Jian-Chen coldly smiled. Hall Master, you never had any good intentions as soon as you arrived in my sea of consciousness. All you can blame is yourself for not being strong enough, so why try to explain it as a sneak attack? A sword that was 2 fingers wide appeared in Jian-Chen's hand. The sword was condensed from the power of his soul from his sea of consciousness. With a violent tremble, the sword turned into a resplendent streak of light as it shot toward the Hall Master's soul. The Hall Master's soul had already become extremely weak after being terrified by the battle among the stars and then heavily injured by the sword spirits. Coupled with the fact that he was in Jian-Chen's sea of consciousness, his movements were restricted. It was impossible for him to block Jian-Chen's attack, even dodging was not possible. Jian-Chen's sword passed through the Hall Master's soul, causing him to wail in pain. His soul became even more faint. Jian-Chen, I will not let you go for this, the Hall Master roared. He knew that this strand of soul was done for today. Jian-Chen said nothing. An icy cold light flickered in his eyes. His sword swung toward the Hall Master again as a streak of resplendent light. After sustaining 3 attacks, the Hall Master's soul finally dissipated, having been destroyed in Jian-Chen's sea of consciousness. Jian-Chen deeply exhaled and the sword in his hand disappeared. He knew that the destruction of a strand of the Hall Master's soul would definitely affect his strength. The Hall Master wanted to devour the sea goddess soul, yet Jian-Chen had already made up his mind to assist her. It was very likely that he would come into conflict with the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall in the future, so he did not regret wiping out a clone of his. Suddenly, Jian-Chen's eyes froze. He could clearly sense a strand of power from the soul where the Hall Master's clone had vanished. The power was extremely pure, but there was only a single strand of it. It did not possess any consciousness within. Jian-Chen rejoiced inside. He understood what had happened very quickly. After being destroyed in his sea of consciousness, the soul did not dissipate. Instead, it was trapped there. Although the strand of power had weakened, it was still an extremely beneficial thing to Jian-Chen. Jian-Chen immediately began to absorb the power. Fortunately, the strand of power was rather gentle in nature, so Jian-Chen encountered no difficulties absorbing it. Very soon, the strand of power disappeared from his sea of consciousness, having been completely absorbed away. Immediately, an indescribable feeling of ecstasy filled Jian-Chen. He could sense that his soul had been enriched, becoming even more powerful than before. Even the sword spirits benefited after absorbing the power. Returning his attention back to his body, Jianchen immediately felt that he could sense his surroundings in an even sharper clarity. Even if he did not use his presence, he could vaguely sense the clansmen 1,000 meters away. Suddenly, Jianchen expanded his presence as much as he could, and he was in for a big surprise. His presence before could only cover a radius of 10,000 kilometers, yet it could now cover a 20,000 kilometer radius. The radius had increased by an entire fold. The strength of my soul should have already surpassed the souls of saint kings at great perfection, but it's still a little weaker than a saint emperor, Jianchen deduced inside. However, he shook his head soon after. He felt like it was inaccurate to use a standard like that. This was because among saint emperors, there were those with stronger and weaker souls, such as the class 9 magical beasts from the beast god continent. They were also saint emperors, but their souls were their weakness and would not necessarily be more powerful than Jianchen's current soul. On the other hand, the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall may not have been as powerful as the class 9 magical beasts of the beast god continent, but his soul was definitely several times stronger. Though the Hall Master has given me a great gift this time, allowing my soul to strengthen by so much, Jianchen thought. He was currently in the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall, so he did not need to fear the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall. If the Hall Master's true body was bold enough to move against him, the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall would personally come to stop him without any need for Jianchen to do anything. At this moment, a heavy but loud sound suddenly reverberated from the Divine Hall within the territory of the Heaven Spirit Hall, along with a wave of vast energy that rushed out like a tsunami. It caused the entire structure to shake violently. Many experts who cultivated there were alarmed, and all of them emerged from their rooms in surprise. They all began to whisper to each other in discussion. Jianchen, I'll never forgive you. I'll make you suffer the most excruciating torture for as long as possible before killing you, the Hall Master bellowed angrily from within the Divine Hall. A figure who radiated with terrifying ripples of energy left the Divine Hall like a streak of lightning as he made his way to the Sea Goddess Hall. Isn't that the Hall Master who hasn't emerged for quite a few years? Why has the Hall Master suddenly become so furious? Didn't you hear the Hall Master curse the ruler of the Turtle Clan, Jianchen? Jianchen sure is something. The Hall Master has such a good temperament, yet he's actually become so furious because of Jianchen. I really do wonder what Jianchen has done. Weird. From what I know, the ruler of the Turtle Clan has always stayed in the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall and has not ventured elsewhere in recent times. How has he offended the Hall Master and made him so furious? Many guests, elders, and hall elders quietly discussed the matter in the Divine Hall. A portion of them obviously hated Jianchen, but there was also a tiny group of people who secretly admired him. He had offended the Hall Master of the Serpent God Hall before, and now he had offended the Hall Master of the Heaven Spirit Hall. His boldness really was admirable, offending the emperors of the two halls one after another. The Hall Master flew toward the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall while radiating with a powerful killing intent. His face was extremely sunken as his bone-deep hatred for Jianchen burned inside. Jianchen had killed a clone of his. Not only would it severely affect the strength he could use, it even heavily injured his soul, making it difficult to recover. What was even more unbearable for him was that he had actually suffered a sneak attack from a 16th star expert as an emperor. That was just utterly embarrassing for him. Jianchen, do you really think that the fake image you conjured when I was in your sea of consciousness would be enough to scare me away? I'm not muddle-headed like a child. That image was very realistic, giving the feeling as if I was actually there, but it's an illusion in the end. It's impossible to be true. How can such terrifying experts exist in the world, where a single droplet of their blood would be enough to kill a saint emperor? And that there's an innumerable amount of them? It's a joke that I believed as real back then, said the Hall Master through gritted teeth. He was torn between anger and shame. To think that he, a great emperor, had been frightened by a realistic illusion. That only deepened his shame. However, when he arrived at the boundary between the two territories, he began to hesitate. He did not cross it in a hurry. If I enter the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall right now, I would be breaking the agreement. At that time, I'll be stopped by the Hall Master before I even see that blasted Jian Chen. My soul's injured right now, so I'm not that woman's opponent. The Hall Master calmed down and thought inside. He hesitated. Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, are you intending to trespass the territory of my Sea Goddess Hall? Just as he hesitated, an icy cold voice rang out from up ahead. A figure surrounded by blue light silently appeared opposite of him. Her figure was blurred, but she was clearly a woman. She stood exactly 10 meters away in the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall, facing the Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Chapter 1248, Arrival of the Worldly Ebb. Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, are you intending to trespass the territory of my Sea Goddess Hall? Just as he hesitated, an icy cold voice rang out from up ahead. A figure surrounded by blue light silently appeared opposite of him. Her figure was blurred, but she was clearly a woman. She stood exactly 10 meters away in the territory of the Sea Goddess Hall, facing the Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall, I never thought that you'd arrive so quickly. You've appeared as soon as I've arrived at the border. Are you really that afraid of me entering your territory? The Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall heavily questioned. The woman coated in blue light right in front of him was the Saint Emperor of the Sea Goddess Hall. He had not expected her to arrive so quickly. She's probably discovered me long ago and probably set off at the same time as I left the Heaven's Spirit Hall. It's fortunate that I didn't act irrationally in my anger. If I had accidentally entered the Sea Goddess Hall's territory, it would have been troublesome. I would obviously be fearless if I was in my peak condition, but my soul was just injured and my strength was greatly affected. I'm definitely not this woman's opponent if we really do start fighting, the Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall thought in relief. There is a clear agreement between the three territories among the Sea Realm. All those who are part of the halls cannot trespass in the territory of the others, and even emperors must follow this agreement. Hall Master, I hope you do not break this agreement, said the Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall coldly. The Hall Master's face sank. Of course I know. I may have come to the boundary between the two halls, but I am still in the territory of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. I have not formally entered your lands, so I have not broken the agreement. With that, the Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall disappeared with a sway. He had already left with extremely great speed, returning to the Heaven's Spirit Hall. I'll let you live a few more days, Jian Chen. I'll definitely return your action of wiping out my clone by 1,000-fold, thought the Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall viciously. The Hall Master of the Sea Goddess Hall watched him leave as her lips slowly curled into a smile. Joy appeared on her face as she celebrated the suffering of the Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall. She murmured, Jian Chen sure is skillful, to be able to destroy one of his clones. You've made me worry for nothing. However, the Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall has suffered greatly this time. It'll be very difficult for him to recover in a short amount of time with that injury to his soul. Did he really think that he could deceive everyone by secretly coming here with a clone and trying to control Jian Chen without anyone noticing? He doesn't know that I have half of Her Majesty the Sea Goddess legacy. In the blink of an eye, another few days passed. During that period of time, it was extremely calm in the Turtle Clan. Jian Chen had handed over all the miscellaneous matters to the elders to deal with while he remained in the room to cultivate. He did not take a single step out and had only gave a rough direction in regards to the development of the Turtle Clan. He handed all the authority to the elders for that after giving his rough idea. During that period of time, the Tao family maintained an extremely low profile. The activity of the clan members also became minimal. They were not willing to try their luck just in case they came across the Turtle Clan. At the same time, the Turtle Clan did not provoke the Tao family purposefully. Both sides knew that their opponents had a divine hall, so they could not be defeated. They were unable to do anything to each other and, hence, were locked in a stalemate. If they went overboard and caused their opponents to go on a wild slaughter, they would only be able to helplessly watch as their opponents hid in their divine hall. As a result, the Tao family and Turtle Clan actually came to a rare ceasefire, but still maintained their weariness of each other. Jianshen remained seated in the room of the Turtle Clan as he cultivated. Since he cultivated the chaotic body, he absorbed monster cores extremely quickly. The speed at which he absorbed them was incomparable to regular people. The number of empty monster cores stacked in the corner of the room had already neared 1,000, basically forming a small hill. Jianshen, the worldly ebb is about to erupt. Make your final preparations immediately. At this moment, a hazy voice rang through Jianshen's head. Only the voice was present, without an exact source. It was the sea goddess secretly communicating with Jianshen. Jianshen's ears twitched slightly as he ended his cultivation. He used a communication technique to call over Tai Ta and newbies before making his way to the central hall of the clan. Very soon, Tai Ta and newbies walked in. As soon as they saw Jianshen, newbies said, "Jianshen, why have you called the two of us over? The worldly ebb of the sea realm has arrived. I'll be leaving the clan immediately to go to where it occurs. Will you be coming with me or remaining in the Turtle Clan?" Jianshen asked the two of them. Newbies also knew about the worldly ebb. Her Majesty the Sea Goddess gifted me with a ruler's Niden as well back then, so I, the great newbies, owe her a favor. I will obviously go to the worldly ebb to return the Sea Goddess favor. Jianshen, I'll go with you. I'll go wherever you go. Tai Ta did not hesitate either. Although he had no clue as to what the worldly ebb was, he had already made up his mind to follow Jianshen. Jianshen nodded and agreed to have the two of them to go with him. Although the dangers there were unknown, he could still use the saint artifact. If they came across any dangers, they could hide in the artifact space. Afterward, Jianshen summoned Qing Yishuan. He gave her the Octaterra Divine Hall and said, "Qing Yishuan, I'll be leaving for a period of time for some matters. I'll leave the Divine Hall with you for now and give you a portion of its control, just in case the Tao family launches a sneak attack." Qing Yishuan did not become happy or excited because Jianshen gave her the Octaterra Divine Hall. She glanced at him emotionlessly and coldly said, "You sure are a leisure ruler of the Turtle Clan. Probably the first in history. Hee, you obviously have no right to nitpick what I do as the ruler. Just do what you need to do while you remain in the Turtle Clan. You need to guarantee the safety of the clan before I wipe out the Tao family," Jianshen nonchalantly replied. Qing Yishuan coldly snorted before quietly accepting the Divine Hall. If it were not for the fact that the Tao family was in possession of something extremely important to her, she would not be helping the Turtle Clan stand up to the powerful Tao family. Soon afterward, Jianshen, Tai Ta, and newbies silently left the clan. Other than Qing Yishuan, no one else knew of their departure. Everyone in the clan, including the elders, Tai Do, Lan Jing, and the others, all thought that Jianshen was still in seclusion. Jianshen did not want his departure to be leaked. If the Tao family learned that he had left and decided to move against the Turtle Clan during that time, there would be very heavy losses. Jianshen, Tai Ta, and newbies erased their presences as they hurried through the sea realm with extremely low profiles. They hurried to the location the sea goddess had told them about. The three of them moved very quickly, leaving the territory of the sea goddess hall in just a day. They arrived in a desolate land that lacked energy of the world. The region did not belong to any of the three halls' territories because it was extremely barren. There were no crystal mines, and the energy of the world was extremely thin there. Violent storms would erupt from time to time that could even kill an Earth Saint Masters. It was impossible for weaker people to live there while stronger people would never go there to cultivate. As a result, the region became desolate after some time. No one was willing to go there. The three of them continued flying for over 10,000 kilometers, headed to the depths of the desolate region. Suddenly, an extremely powerful ripple of energy entered their range of senses. Jianshen, Tai Ta, and newbies' expression hardened as surprise appeared in their eyes. The energy ripple was so powerful that it made their expressions change. The energy was filled with violence and destruction, and the vast disturbance made them wonder if there were two Saint Emperors fighting up ahead. That's the place that the sea goddess told us. Has this powerful ripple of energy been caused by the worldly ebb? Just what is the worldly ebb like? Jianchen thought as doubt riddled him inside. The three of them flew for another several thousand kilometers before finally seeing the source of the terrifying ripple. The source was an extremely vast whirlpool of energy, several dozen kilometers wide. It spun at an unbelievable speed, and the terrifying force it created caused the space several kilometers away to visibly distort. Pitch-black space cracks would appear from time to time. Jianchen, Tai Ta, and Nubis stopped 100 kilometers away from the whirlpool. They stared at it in shock. The whirlpool was actually completely formed from extremely pure energy, such that it had almost become a liquid. The energy within the terrifying whirlpool had completely surpassed the energy within Saint Emperors. Jianchen even suspected that the energy within those of the origin realm would probably only be a tenth of the total amount. Jian could even feel that the energy became purer the closer it was to the center. What a terrifying whirlpool of energy! Jianchen, is this the place of the worldly ebb? Nubis stared blankly at the whirlpool as he choked out his words. Jianchen said nothing because he didn't know either. He had never seen what a worldly ebb looked like. Chapter 1249, Absorbing the Energy of the World Ebb, What a Terrifying Whirlpool of Energy. Jianchen, is this the place of the worldly ebb? Nubis stared blankly at the whirlpool as he choked out his words. Jianchen said nothing because he didn't know either. He had never seen what a worldly ebb looked like. Correct, this is the worldly ebb. At this moment, the sea goddess voice rang through their heads. The sea goddess illusionary body gradually appeared before the three of them. Her face was a blur, making it impossible to see her appearance. Only her pupils, bright like moonlight, could be seen. The sea goddess swept her gaze over the three of them before looking at the huge whirlpool of energy. She said, "This place can be labeled as the most wondrous as well as the most well-hidden place in the sea realm. Extremely powerful energy ripples will erupt once every 10,000 years here before forming this huge whirlpool of energy. I call it the worldly ebb. In all these years, I've tried investigating the reason for the worldly ebb, but I have learned nothing. Even now, I have no idea why it forms, but all I know is that the vast energy that gathers here comes from the entire world. All the various energies in this region silently gather here once every 10,000 years and form this huge whirlpool. No one can sense it, and if I had not purposefully watched over this place, I would not have been able to discover the secret hidden here. A tunnel will gradually form at the center of the whirlpool. It is a tunnel to another region of space. I once used my soul to explore that space. It does not have any energy of the world, nor any laws of the world. Even if Saint Emperors enter that space, they'll lose all their comprehension of the mysteries of the world, and even their physical power will be suppressed. They will be reduced to ordinary people. It's definitely not safe in there either. There are many vicious beasts that live there. Although they lack intelligence, they are not weak. Even Saint Emperors will fall when their abilities are suppressed and they can't use their full strength. The sea goddess gave Jianchen a deep look when she reached that point. She said, "Jianchen, the reason why I've come to you is because the energy you use is different from others. Although I've never seen or heard of this energy, I can sense its power. I suspect that your power may not be suppressed in that independent space, so you'll be the one who can use most strength in there or maintain it perfectly. Even if I've guessed incorrectly and your power is suppressed, you can use your powerful body to not die to the vicious beasts." Jianchen thought silently for a while before asking, "Your Majesty, may I ask just what you need me to look for?" "I need you to find two things for me. One of them is a soft, white substance while the other is a green liquid. The liquid is teeming with the presence of life. Those two items are crucial to reconstruct my body," said the sea goddess. Jianchen nodded, "Your Majesty, don't worry. I'll definitely bring back these two items. Although I've entered that independent space with my soul and obtained some information before, my soul dispersed after only moving around in the outskirts after a short while. As a result, I don't know if there are even greater dangers in the depths of the space, so don't go too far in when you enter this time, the sea goddess warned Jianchen in concern. He was her only hope for reconstructing her body, so she obviously did not wish for any accidents to befall him. Then when can I enter, Your Majesty? Jianchen asked as he stared fixedly at the swirl of energy. A tunnel has already formed in the center of the whirlpool. If you're fully prepared, you can enter now. This tunnel will only exist for half a year, and it'll disappear after that time frame. As a result, you have to exit before it closes, or you'll be trapped in there, said the sea goddess. Only half a year? Isn't that a little too short? Jianchen thought inside. He found it rather regretful. He then said to the sea goddess, Your Majesty, not only is the energy gathered here extremely vast, it's extremely pure as well. I want to cultivate here for 3 months and enter the space after that. The sea goddess became surprised because what Jianchen had said. She responded with, the energy here may not possess offensive capabilities, but it's also extremely violent and very difficult to absorb. And once you enter the whirlpool, the pressure will be extremely powerful. Are you certain you want to cultivate here? Jianchen nodded without any hesitation. If he wanted his chaotic body to become stronger, he needed to accumulate vast amounts of energy, even if the amount of energy in the whirlpool was so terrifying that it exceeded his imagination. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him, so how could he miss it so easily? He knew that he would have to endure the pressure if he wanted to absorb the energy there. He believed that it was possible with his tough chaotic body, which was at the 3rd layer. The sea goddess helplessly agreed after seeing how Jianchen was determined. All right then. You can cultivate here for 3 months. After that, I'll split a strand of my soul to enter with you. Although the strand can only exist for less than 2 hours away from me, I can use its power to search and provide you with accurate locations. If you come out early, you can continue to cultivate here for some time. Afterward, Jianchen asked Nubis and Tai Ta if they were willing to cultivate here for 3 months. Nubis immediately paled when he caught a glance of the vast and violent energy and requested to be sent into the artifact space. Although he was a beast of antiquity, just the pressure and ripples of the terrifying energy were no weaker than a battle between 2 saint emperors. He was not confident that he could resist the threat of the whirlpool. Jianchen, I'll stay outside and see if I can absorb the energy. As the war god, my body should be able to endure it. Tai Ta hesitated before planning to try it as well. Afterward, Jianchen sent Nubis into the artifact space before entering the whirlpool carefully with Tai Ta. He originally planned to let out the white tiger in the artifact space to cultivate as well, but when he remembered that he was not even at the level of Saint Kings, he gave up on that. As a beast god, the white tiger's body could probably rival Tai Ta, but Tai Ta was not fully confident even as a 4th heavenly layer Saint King. Jianchen and Tai Ta entered the edge of the whirlpool and their bodies suddenly jerked. The whirlpool spun at an unbelievable speed, and it spun faster near the edges. The terrifying suction force almost caused Jianchen and Tai Ta to lose their balance as soon as they had stepped into the whirlpool. Jianchen and Tai Ta reactions were extremely quick. With a deep grunt, they arduously whirled to stabilize themselves. Their feet were planted into the ground like roots, and they did not move no matter how great the force of the whirlpool was. The pure energy that had almost liquefied swept over the 2 of them like sharp blades. The moment it swept over them, their clothes were reduced to shreds while a layer of thin wounds appeared Tai Ta's body. Golden blood could vaguely be seen. However, Tai Ta's recovery rate was very fast. His wounds immediately began to close up right after they had been split open by the energy. He could remain a certain equilibrium between suffering damage and healing. Jianchen, I'll cultivate here. I probably can't absorb the energy inside, Tai Ta said to Jianchen before immediately sitting down to cultivate. Jianchen did not stop at the edge. He continued toward the center of the whirlpool all by himself. The toughness of his chaotic body was clearly tougher than Tai Ta's body as the war god at his current level. Although it was extremely painful to be cut by razor-sharp energy blames on almost every inch of his body, no wounds formed. Jian stopped after traveling 30 kilometers inside. He had almost reached the center of the whirlpool, and the energy there was even more pure than where Tai Ta had stopped. The suction force had weakened as well, but it was several times more dangerous than the outskirts. The more pure the energy was, the more violent it was. Thus, the energy here was very difficult to absorb, so it was a huge test of the body. At the same time, the pressure from the energy was even more terrifying. A single moment of carelessness would lead to a backlash and heavy injuries, or would lead to death on the spot. Jian had pushed the chaotic body to its limits long ago. He then sat there and began to absorb the energy. As soon as the energy entered him, he violently shuddered. The energy he was absorbing felt like gunpowder and exploded as soon as it touched him. If it were not for the toughness of the chaotic body, he probably would have been heavily injured already. Chapter 1250, Peak of the Third Layer. Jian quickly recalled the cultivation method of the chaotic body recorded in the Azulite Sword Law before entering a state of cultivation. He silently endured the burning pain brought on by the violent whirlpool of energy as the chaotic Niden in his dantian produced strands of chaotic force. These strands of chaotic force quickly rampaged through his body. They viciously smashed into the energy of the whirlpool like dragons, grinding away the violent factor inside and leaving behind the purest energy possible. Then it could finally be absorbed and slowly be converted into chaotic force. Jian's chaotic Niden became smaller and smaller. He had directed a third of all of his chaotic force out of the Niden, basically forming rivers that ran through every corner of his body. The vast amounts of chaotic force flowed quickly, forming a protective net. All the energy he absorbed from the whirlpool would have to pass through the net, filtering out the violent factor. All that was left behind was the purest energy for Jian to absorb. Outside the whirlpool, the sea goddess figure that had been condensed from her soul hovered there silently. She stared fixedly at Jian as he cultivated several dozen kilometers in the whirlpool. The surprise in her eyes grew heavier and heavier. I never thought that Jian's body had actually reached such a level of toughness. Without any protection, he can stay near the center of the whirlpool and remain unscathed just with the toughness of his body. Probably even Saint Emperor magical beasts can't do this. Although Saint Emperors can easily reach where he is, they need to use their powerful energy to resist the rush, or even they will become injured. But what has surprised me even more is that not only can Jian stay there and remain perfectly fine with his tough body, he can absorb the energy and cultivate. The violent factor within the energy grows stronger the closer one is to the center. If energy like that enters the body, it would reduce the interior to a battlefield without any doubt. This is extremely fatal even to a Saint Emperor. They could end up utterly doomed with the slightest careless mistake. I really do wonder what cultivation method Jian practices. Not only does he wield a powerful energy that I've never seen or heard of, but even his body is terrifyingly tough. He probably can just stand there and third heavenly layer Saint Kings won't even be able to puncture his skin with his current toughness. In roughly a dozen minutes, Jian had already absorbed an extremely vast amount of pure energy from the whirlpool. The energy was so vast that it was enough to shock a Saint King, but to Jian, it was only a strand of chaotic force after being filtered. Jian finally refined his first strand of chaotic force from the whirlpool in that short amount of time, which immediately delighted him. I still have another 3 months to cultivate here, and there will be many dozens of minutes in 3 months. I wonder if I can reach the 4th layer within that time frame. Jian began to anticipate the end of the cultivation period. His battle prowess would increase by several smaller cultivation realms with every increase in the chaotic body. Once he reached the 4th layer, he might reach the level of Saint Emperors, but he was certain he could reach the 9th heavenly layer of Saint King or even great perfection. It's a pity that time's limited. I can only cultivate here for 3 months. Although there's an endless supply of energy here, raising my chaotic body to the 4th layer in 3 months will still be rather difficult. If only I could stay here forever. There'd even be a tiny hope of reaching the 5th layer if that were the case, let alone the 4th. Jian could not help but feel rather regretful. Places like the worldly ebb were just far too difficult to find, and the worldly ebb would only occur once every 10,000 years. He could not rely on waiting for it to appear again, because the energy in the worldly ebb might not mean anything to him after 10,000 years. In the blink of an eye, Jian Shen had stayed there for a month. In that time, he had refined so many strands of chaotic force that he had forgotten the number. However, he could feel his chaotic Niden swell at a slow rate every day as the chaotic force in it increased. Tai Ta spent the entire time cultivating as well. Although he was a warring god with a battle prowess no weaker than Jian Shen, his body was nowhere near as tough as his. As a result, Tai Ta remained in the very outskirts of the whirlpool to absorb the energy and did not progress any deeper. Although the suction force at the outskirts was even greater than in the depths, the violent factor present in the energy was minute, so it was much easier to absorb. A month later, the toughness of Jian Shen's chaotic body slowly increased after being forged by the energy of the whirlpool. It no longer posed any risk to him now, so he stopped cultivating and ventured another 5 kilometers toward the center. He stopped when he had reached his utmost limit before continuing to cultivate. Although he had only advanced by 5 kilometers, the purity of the energy had greatly increased. He required around a dozen minutes to refine a single strand of chaotic force, but 5 kilometers later, he could refine 13 or even 14 strands in about 2 hours. His refinement rate had increased very much. Unknowingly, Jian Shen had cultivated for 3 months. However, to his regret, he failed to reach the 4th layer in that time. He remained at the 3rd layer, but his egg-sized chaotic Niden had reached the size of a fist. To no surprise, this was the sign of the peak of the 3rd layer. Jian Shen ended his 3 months of cultivation. Although he knew that he only needed another month to reach the 4th layer, the time frame agreed upon by him and the sea goddess had ended. He needed to stop cultivating and enter the independent space to find the materials required to reconstruct the sea goddess body. Finding the materials were far more important than reaching the 4th layer to him. After all, now that he was at the peak of the 3rd layer, he could reach the 4th layer with just a large pile of high-class monster cores, even if he could not use the energy of the worldly ebb anymore. However, the opportunity to reconstruct the sea goddess body only came once every 10,000 years, and if he missed it this time, he would need to wait another 10,000 years. And at that time, she might not be able to find someone suitable. Jian Shen pulled out a set of robes from his space ring and put them on. With a thought, he condensed a layer of chaotic force around him to resist the violent energy that constantly swept past him. He then made his way to Tai Ta. Although he was several dozen kilometers away, Jian Shen could cross the distance in a few seconds. Roused by Jian Shen, Tai Ta immediately stopped cultivating and a golden energy surged from him. He obstructed the violent energy of the worldly ebb around him. As he pulled out a set of robes from his space ring and put them on, he said with a muffled voice, "Jian Shen, this place sure is a good cultivation location. I've only cultivated here for 3 months, but I can already feel that my strength has increased a lot." Jian Shen examined Tai Ta and, indeed, discovered that Tai Ta's strength had increased by quite a lot. Although Tai Ta's cultivation method was special and could not be measured using the standards of the Tianyuan continent, Jian Shen made a rough estimate from his strength and presence. In these 3 months, Tai Ta's strength had increased from the 4th heavenly layer to the 5th, and he was quite close to the 6th. Jian Shen nodded in agreement. "Tai Ta, let's go into the independent space to find the materials for the sea goddess. The sooner we find them, the sooner we can come out, and we might have enough time to continue cultivating here. Then let's hurry. Let's save some time to continue cultivating here." Tai Ta immediately became rather impatient. Afterward, Jian Shen and Tai Ta walked to the center of the swirl, protected by a layer of energy. The sea goddess soul was beside them as well. "Jian Shen, there's a black tunnel at the center. You too can enter that place to get to the independent space. The energy of my soul will be consumed even faster within the whirlpool, so I can't stay in here for too long. I'll be going first," said the sea goddess. Afterward, the strand of her soul condensed into a faint shadow that quickly shot into the hole and vanished in a single moment. Jian Shen and Tai Ta sped up as well. They entered the center of the energy swirl while resisting the great pressure. As soon as they entered the eye of the swirl, the two of them immediately felt their bodies lighten. All the pressure they had been resisting vanished in a single moment, and right before them was a black hole that was 3 meters wide. Nothing was visible inside. Chapter 1251, Xianhuang Microcosm. 1. Jian Shen and Tai Ta examined the black hole. It was the eye of the whirlpool formed by the worldly ebb. It was very calm but filled with a mysterious power. Even Jian Shen's soul, which had surpassed a saint king at great perfection, could not be reached into it. Jian Shen and Tai Ta stood at the edge of the hole for a while before nodding at the same time and leaping in. Jian Shen only felt himself rapidly fall when he jumped into the hole, but that feeling only lasted a few seconds. Afterward, he felt like he was floating in space as if gravity had disappeared. The surrounding space would pulse from time to time, and Jian Shen would sense something different every time, as if he was shifting with every pulse. Is this spatial teleportation? A thought suddenly crossed Jian Shen's mind. Everything was pitch black, and he could see nothing. In order to verify whether he was right or not, he immediately attempted to expand his presence to observe his surroundings. Unfortunately, his presence was suppressed to the limit of his body by a mysterious power, preventing him from expanding it. Oddly enough, Jian Shen actually failed to sense the flow of time in the pitch-black environment. The darkness seemed to have lasted for an entire era, yet also seemed as brief as a few seconds. When Jian Shen finally regained his vision, he had arrived on a whole different world. Standing on solid ground, Jian Shen immediately looked around. He could not help but feel relieved when he discovered Tai Ta standing beside him unharmed. He guessed that he had probably teleported a long distance through pitch-black space. Teleporting was extremely dangerous since they could end up lost in the void with the slightest careless mistake, or they could have been separated after teleportation. The independent space contained many unknown dangers. They did not even have a single idea as to how large the place was. If they ended up separated after being teleported, reuniting would almost be impossible. But fortunately, that did not occur. My strand of soul has been greatly consumed by passing through the tunnel. It is extremely weak now, and it can last for half an hour at most. Jian Shen, I will do all I can to find the materials I need before this strand of soul dissipates. Once I find them, I will tell you where they are, said the sea goddess. She had already arrived before Jian Shen and Tai Ta, but her figure was extremely illusory now. She seemed like a wisp of smoke that could be blown away by the slightest wind. It's best if you make a mark here. If you find the item, you can return here and return to the original world through the distorted space behind you, continued the sea goddess. All right, I'll make one right now, said Jian Shen. He immediately began to create a mark. Marking a location was extremely easy at his current strength. He made one nearby very quickly and then proceeded to make several more in the surrounding radius of 3 kilometers just in case. The sea goddess stared at Jian Shen as he made the marks. She came to an understanding through Jian Shen's speed and methods of making the marks that his strength was unaffected in this independent space, which immediately made her ravish with joy. There's still 3 whole months. That should be enough time for Jian Shen to collect my materials here. Maybe once Jian Shen gets out, I'll be able to fulfill my wish of reconstructing my body, thought the sea goddess. She then turned into a wisp of smoke that spread out as she expanded her limited energy, searching for the materials she needed in all directions. Jian Shen arrived in front of Tai Ta and asked, Tai Ta, can you use your strength as usual? Tai Ta closed his eyes to sense his strength before responding, I can use it as usual, and even my mysteries of war have not been impacted. I can use my regular strength in here. What about you, Jian Shen? My soul has been suppressed to 60% of its peak condition, and I cannot sense the mysteries of the world at all. I cannot use the abilities as a saint ruler, but I can use my chaotic force as usual, said Jian Shen in a heavy voice before letting out newbies from the artifact space. However, his presence began to weaken at an unbelievable rate as soon as he was let out. In less than a minute, all the energy within Nubis was suppressed by a mysterious power. He could not even use his abilities as a saint king. He had been reduced to an ordinary person. Nubis immediately became pale white. He cried out, "God damn it, what is this bloody place? I've actually been reduced to a regular person. To think of all the glory and strength I, the great Nubis, possess outside, I can't even beat a class 6 magical beast in here. This place is far too terrifying. Jian Shen, return me to the artifact space." Nubis was unwilling to stay outside a moment longer and immediately returned to the artifact space. Among the three of them, Jian Shen used chaotic force. Although it was not true chaotic force since its strength was not even 10,000th of the real deal, it still possessed the word chaotic, so it completely exceeded the limits of regular energy and was obviously unable to be suppressed. As for Tai Ta, he was a warring god. His legacy originated from the world, so the energy he used was obviously incomparable to the norm, which explained why he was unrestricted by the mysterious energy of the space. Only Nubis walked a regular path of cultivation, so he was impacted by the restriction. Jian Shen and Tai Ta left the area. They chose a single direction to move off in as they constantly looked around. They were currently located in a desolate, boundless plain. The sky there was yellow, which was extremely rare, and there was no energy of the world nor mysteries of the world. Jian Shen could not even sense radiant saint force. However, Jian Shen could feel an energy that he had never seen or heard throughout the space. Although the energy was extremely thin, he could vaguely sense that it was no weaker than his chaotic force. Afterward, Jian Shen began trying to absorb the mysterious and powerful energy, but to his surprise, he was unable to absorb it. Chapter 1252, Xianhuang Microcosm, 2. I never thought that there would be a power great enough to rival chaotic force in this independent space. This is really surprising. Looks like this space is far more complicated than I had imagined, Jian Shen thought inside, but he also became more cautious. Although Tai Ta and his strength had not been suppressed, Jian Shen dared not to be careless within this extraordinary independent space. Jian Shen and Tai Ta lost their ability to fly freely in this space. An invisible force filled the surroundings, and they would be suppressed by it as soon as they took to the air. Not only were they limited to an altitude of 100 meters, the energy they consumed was several hundred or even 1,000-fold compared to the energy consumed outside. As a result, Jian Shen and Tai Ta chose to travel by foot, but they still moved extremely quick. They had traversed over 100 kilometers in a short while, but the surroundings remained the same. It was still desolate as far as the eye could see. At this moment, the sea goddess Soul floated over as a wisp of smoke. She condensed herself as an extremely faded figure in front of them. This strand of soul was clearly even weaker than before. Jian Shen, there's a small forest 200 kilometers southeast of where you are now. There's a natural pool of water there, and it's filled with green water. The water is filled with a very powerful presence of life, and there's a thumb-sized ball of liquid at the bottom of the pool. The liquid is different from the water and is extremely sticky. It's one of the 2 materials I need to reconstruct my body. Jian Shen, go help me collect that liquid right now, but I may need quite a lot of it when I do rebuild my body, so please collect as much of it as possible in the next few days, explained the sea goddess. However, her illusory figure wavered slightly as she spoke, as if she was about to disperse soon. We'll head over there immediately. Do not worry, Your Majesty. I will definitely collect enough materials for you to rebuild your body, Jian Shen swore before immediately changing directions with Tai Ta, heading off to the southeast as fast as he could. There's 2 Class 7 vicious beasts that guard the small forest. They're no threat to you, but still be careful because there are even more powerful beasts in the depths of this space. I once explored this place with my soul in the past, and the strongest one I came across was the equivalent to a saint king at great perfection. I suspect that it still isn't the most powerful in this space, but I could not probe any further before my soul dispersed due to hitting my limit. As a result, I don't know if there are Saint Emperor vicious beasts in here. At the same time, the green water in the pool is no ordinary object either. It's best if you take some with you. The green water here is something that has never been seen outside, so it's probably some impressive treasure. My soul is being consumed at an extremely fast rate and is about to disperse. Jianchen, it'll be up to the two of you in the future. Remember to return safely in 3 months' time. I shall await your good news outside. The sea goddess' voice gently faded away. At the same time, the strand of her soul completely dispersed into the surroundings. Jianchen and Tai Ta said nothing. They only focused on hurrying along, and very soon, a small forest appeared in their vision. The lush, small trees swayed in the breeze. The small forest stretched for several dozen kilometers, so it was indeed insignificant compared to the random forests that could stretch for thousands or even tens of thousands of kilometers on the Tianyuan continent. The vegetation that grew there was sparse. Although the tallest tree was only a dozen or so meters tall, every single tree grew vigorously, with densely packed, lush leaves across every branch. They were teeming with life. As soon as Jianchen and Tai Ta entered the forest, they propelled themselves by kicking off the trees. They shot into the sky as they charged toward the center of the forest like arrows. They vanished in the blink of an eye. Jianchen did not use his presence. His presence was severely limited in this strange little world, and as soon as he used it, it would be consumed at a rate several dozen times faster than the outside world. As a result, he just used his eyes to distinguish where the center of the forest was. In less than a minute, the two of them arrived at the very center of the forest. They stood beside a green pool of water that was only 2 meters wide. The water was transparent, free from any impurities, so they could see the bottom of it. It was only 1 meter deep at most, and Jianchen had indeed discovered a thumb-sized ball of liquid sitting quietly at the bottom. The liquid's color was an even deeper hue than the water, allowing him to distinguish it in a single glance. It just sat in the water and did not dissolve. Jianchen slowly closed his eyes as he stood beside the small pool. He sucked in a deep breath and immediately felt the intense presence of life enter his body through his nostrils. Comfort filled his organs. What an intense presence of life. There's such a clear feeling with just a breath. If I drink it, wouldn't the effects be even more shocking? It even has the effect of extending my longevity. Jianchen exclaimed as he stared at the green water before him. He had not cared much when the sea goddess had mentioned that the water was teeming with the presence of life. Only after personally experiencing how intense it was did he understand how extraordinary the water was. So nice. Tai Ta copied Jianchen as he closed his eyes and sucked in several breaths of the presence of life. He looked like he was intoxicated. Just when the two of them had relaxed, 2 figures suddenly darted out of the forest, charging towards the two of them with lightning-like speed. Jianchen's eyes snapped open as a sharp gleam of light flashed through them. He glared at the 2 figures as a strand of gray sword chi condensed in his right hand in a single moment. The sword chi was condensed from chaotic force and was a meter long. It radiated with a violent and destructive presence. With a swing of his arm, he used the sword chi as a sword and chopped at the figures at a speed several times faster than them. Jianchen could clearly sense a sliver of resistance when the sword chi collided with the figures. The toughness of their bodies was rather frightening, but it was still not enough to change anything. One of them was split in half by Jianchen. On the other side, Tai Ta hurled his fist at the other figure. With a heavy sound, the figure was knocked far away, hitting a tree as thick as a water bucket 20 meters away before falling to the ground. If this happened outside, the same tree would have snapped in half if it was struck with such force or even turned to pieces, but the tree only shook violently. Not only was it completely fine, not even a branch had snapped off. Jianchen examined the figures that had ambushed the two of them. He discovered that they were 1 meter long, feral dog-like beasts covered with fleshy scales. All their limbs possessed sharp claws and their bodies were extremely tough. However, both of them had been reduced to corpses now. Besides the one that had been split in half by Jianchen, the one that had rushed Tai Ta died from his punch. Even though the two of them were Class 7 vicious beasts, they were weak like ants before Jian Chen and Tai Ta. I wonder if these vicious beasts have monster cores, Jian Chen thought. He then walked over to the vicious beast he had killed and used sword chi he conjured at the tip of his finger to carve through it, carefully searching through the body. A while later, Jian Chen was pleasantly surprised. Indeed, there was a tough, peanut-sized crystal within the vicious beast. It contained a pure and powerful energy equivalent to the energy hidden within Class 7 monster cores. This really has failed to disappoint me. Is this the monster core in these vicious beasts? Jian Kem marveled at the peanut-sized crystal in his hand. The energy within the crystal was equivalent to Class 7 magical beasts, but it was much smaller. Tai Ta's face lit up in joy as well when he saw this. He jogged over to the vicious beast he had killed with a punch and also removed a peanut-sized crystal from its body. He rubbed it against his clothes like a treasure before happily putting it into his space ring. He smiled honestly, hee, if I sell this Class 7 monster core on the Tianyuan continent, it should make me quite some money. Jian Chen glanced at him in a critical fashion. He had roamed the Tianyuan continent for so long, but this was the first time he had heard that a Saint King lacked money. Afterward, Jian Chen returned to the side of the pool. He gathered some of the water without any hurry and then carefully pooled some of the green water near his mouth, slowly gulping it down. Immediately, a cool feeling filled his body before turning into warm feeling that quickly reached his organs. It was absorbed by his entire body, and he felt an indescribable comfort. At that moment, Jian Chen felt deluded, as if his life force had slightly increased with that mouthful of water. Obviously, Jian Chen understood this was all an illusion. The water he had just drunk did not increase his life at all. What a heavy presence of life. Master, what heavenly resource have you found this time? I can actually feel the faint presence of Xianhuang Qi. A sword spirit's voice rang through Jian Chen's head before coming to a sudden halt. The next moment, it began to cry out in disbelief, how is this possible? Why do I feel the existence of Xianhuang Qi? The sword spirits appeared outside with that. They looked around and immediately became extremely excited. Their faces were filled with serendipity and disbelief. They cried out, it's a Xianhuang microcosm. It's actually a Xianhuang microcosm. Chapter 1253, Spring of Life. Jian Chen immediately became stunned when he saw how violently the sword spirits reacted. He had been with them for so long, and it was extremely rare for them to behave like this. However, Jian Chen knew that the sword spirits were extremely experienced and had seen countless wondrous treasures. Ordinary items never piqued their interest, but anything that could was an extremely rare treasure without a doubt. A Xianhuang microcosm? Jian Che murmured softly before looking at the world around him. He started to feel like the world was far more complicated than he had expected since the sword spirits reacted like that. Jian Chen, who are they? Tai Ta discovered the sword spirits when they appeared above Jian Chen, so he asked a question while full of doubt. The gaze he directed at the two of them was filled with a deep curiosity. The appearances of the sword spirits were the same as before. They appeared as a young man and a woman around the age of 20. The man was handsome while the woman was pretty. They seemed like a match made in heaven, and the only flaw was that they were illusory and not tangible. Jian Chen gave a simple explanation to Tai Ta before asking the sword spirits, Ziying, Qing Suo, what's this Xianhuang microcosm about? The sword spirits were extremely excited as they constantly looked around. Their excitement became even more intense instead of dissipating, as if they had found a huge treasure stash. It's actually an untouched Xianhuang microcosm. This is fantastic, far too fantastic. Master, we never thought that you'd have such great fortune that you'd come across an untouched Xianhuang microcosm, Qing Suo said in delight as her excitement surged. Ziying understood that Jian Chen had no idea what a Xianhuang microcosm was, so he explained what it was in detail. Master, the Xianhuang microcosm is a microcosm formed from Zhuanghuang Qi. Xianhuang Qi is an energy that arises from chaotic force and is only second to chaotic force. It is even greater than the yin qi and yang qi that arises from chaos. However, Xianhuang qi is also known as creation force because it can create everything. This microcosm before you is created from Xianhuang qi, so we call it a Xianhuang microcosm. Many heavenly resources and heavenly treasures appear in Xianhuang microcosms, treasures that can even move experts at the level of our former master. Because the Xianhuang microcosm is filled with Xianhuang qi, everything that appears here is extraordinary. Even the most common heavenly resources in the outside world will drastically increase in value after they are tainted with Xianhuang qi. An ordinary 1,000-year-old heavenly resource from the Xianhuang microcosm will be worth a 2,000-year-old or even 3,000-year-old heavenly resource outside. Other than that, the Xianhuang microcosm will give birth to many wondrous items that can't possibly appear in the outside world, and the spring water filled with the presence of life master has just ingested is one of them. The origin of this spring water is known as the spring of life. Not only can this water be used to create immortal pills, it can greatly increase their grade. At the same time, ingesting the water can heal any hidden wounds, so it possesses regenerative properties. However, the most valuable part is still the essence that has been nurtured for countless years within the water. The essence can extend lives, nourish the life source of people, and refine their souls. It can also heal wounds on the soul, which makes it extremely valuable. Jian Shen could not help but marvel at Zi Ying's explanation. He had never thought that he had unknowingly come to such treasury. From what Zi Ying said, every single item within this microcosm was a treasure. Not only did this include the useless-looking vegetation, it probably included an ordinary blade of grass and possibly even the soil. At this moment, Jian Chen's gaze landed on the thumb-sized ball of liquid at the bottom of the pool. He asked, "Ziying, is this the essence that's been nurtured by the spring water?" Ziying only glanced at the liquid at the bottom of the pool before continuing to observe his surroundings. He said, "Correct, that's the essence, but most heavenly resources are split into different grades. The spring of life here is only the first grade of the immortal tier, which will produce spring water of the lowest grade among all of the spring waters. It's useless to some stronger people. If Master reaches the 6th layer of the chaotic body, the spring water and essence here would be completely useless." Jian Shen immediately became disappointed when he heard that the spring water was useless to stronger people, but it was immediately replaced by delight when he heard the last part. He understood now. It was only the first grade of the immortal tier, but it was useful to experts below Saint Emperor. It was probably useless to those of the origin realm. Jian Shen immediately pulled out a container and eagerly began to collect the water after gaining an understanding of its value. Jian Shen then carefully stored away the thumb-sized essence at the bottom of the pool. "Master, this spring of life is what this forest relies on, so you can't drain the whole thing," Qing Sua warned. Jian Shen nodded. In the end, he only took half of all the water, which was over 50 liters in total. If it were not for the fact that his gourd was similar to a space ring and contained another space inside, he would probably have needed several of them to store all the water. "Master, the closer you get to the center of the microcosm, the more heavenly resources you'll come across, and their quality will be even greater. We're only on the very outskirts right now. Let's travel further in. There'll definitely be even more good things inside, and even the springs of life will be of higher grades," said Zi Ying excitedly. Although there were very few items useful to him in the Xianhuang microcosm, that was not necessarily the same for Jian Shen. "Zi Ying, will there be even more springs of life inside?" Jian Shen suddenly asked as his face became rather blank. "Correct. Although there are no springs of life in the outside world, they're equivalent to ordinary water sources here. They are not rare. The springs of life near the center of the microcosm can even form small lakes." Jian Shen glanced at the palm-sized gourd in his hand. He had not purchased it himself but found it in a space ring owned by one of the experts that had died to his hands. Every single gourd contained around half a cubic meter of space, so they could store roughly 500 liters. However, he only had around 10 of gourds in total. Although he had a few more containers that could store liquids, the amount of space was limited. Even if he combined all the containers, he could only store around 10,000 liters at most. The Xianhuang microcosm contained many springs of life, and the water in it was so precious that it was non-existent outside. Jianshen obviously wanted to store enough of it in one stroke, and 10,000 liters was clearly not enough for him. After all, the worldly ebb in the sea realm only occurred once every 10,000 years. Chapter 1254, Comprehension. Tree Jianshen's face immediately became rather bitter when he thought of the fact that he did not have enough containers. The springs of life were everywhere in the Xianhuang microcosm, but they were extremely rare in the outside world. Could he only take 10,000 liters with him since he had entered the Xianhuang microcosm by coincidence? Although it sounded like a lot, there were just far too many people Jianshen needed to think about on the Tianyuan continent. 10,000 liters was nowhere near enough. Ziying, Qingsuo, I want to collect some of the spring water in this place and take it out, but I don't have enough storage for it at all. Do you have any good ideas? With no other choice, Jianshen could only seek help from the sword spirits. In most cases, heavenly resources needed to be stored carefully through a special method, and he did not understand the spring water, so he obviously could not think of a better idea. Then do this, Master. Gather some of the soil in this place and use it to create pools in the artifact space. You can load the spring water into those pools, Qingsuo immediately responded. A sliver of surprise appeared in Jianshen's eyes. He asked, does that work? Won't it affect the efficacy of the spring water? Qingsuo giggled and sweetly answered, there's no need for you to worry, Master. The water's efficacy will not be affected for at least 10 years. Once Master leaves the microcosm, you'll have plenty of time to find even more containers to store the spring water, but all of them must be wooden. Jianshen completely stopped worrying with that. He did not need to worry about the fact that the containers needed to be wooden. All he needed was to pass down a single message when he returned to the Tianyuan continent, and the flame mercenaries along with the Bloodsword sect would be able to help him find a large number of wooden storage items. Afterward, Jianshen immediately began to collect some of the Xianhuang microcosm's soil. He sent all of it into the artifact space and got the several dozen elites of the flame mercenaries in there to create pools to store spring water. Ziying glanced at the corpses of the two beasts and said, Master, you can collect the corpses of the Xianhuang beasts as well. Since these beasts have grown up in the Xianhuang microcosm, their flesh is extremely nutritious to cultivators. They will bring many great benefits if their meat is consumed over a long period of time. With that, Jianshen collected the two corpses as well before strolling through the forest. After confirming there was nothing valuable left, the two of them headed off. They traveled in the direction the sword spirits provided, heading to the central region. The Xianhuang microcosm was filled with various wondrous treasures, but almost all the good items gathered near the center. There were very few items on the outskirts. Since they couldn't stay in this place for very long, the two of them traveled very quickly to save time. After entering the Xianhuang microcosm, the sword spirits maintained their human form above Jianshen's head, moving along with him. The task of looking for treasures along the way fell to them. After all, their knowledge and experience was incomparable to Jianshen. Many heavenly resources seemed ordinary and did not stand out in any aspect, but their value would be incalculable. Jianshen would not necessarily recognize them even if they were placed right before him, so he needed a guide like the sword spirits. After traveling for another several hundred kilometers, a small hill gradually appeared before Jianshen and Taita. It was filled with wondrous flowers, and the fragrance they gave off lingered in the air several dozen kilometers away. It was a faint but lovely smell. Jianshen smelled the unique fragrance from far away and subconsciously sucked in a deep breath. He immediately felt at ease and reinvigorated, as if his head had cleared up a lot at that moment. A light, joyful feeling filled him all over. These flowers can't be any regular flowers for them to have such great effects on Saint Kings, Jianshen praised from the bottom of his heart. The Xianhuang microcosm really was littered with treasures. The two of them arrived at the hill very quickly. The whole place was filled with various flowers. Jian Shen had never seen a single one of them before, so he obviously could not name them. Now that he was in the sea of flowers, the fragrance was becoming heavier and heavier. It slowly entered Jian Chen's body through his nostrils, and he felt intoxicated. It felt like all his pores had opened up and the foul gases contained within him had all been released. Even though that was not really the case, the fragrance made him feel such a wondrous thing. These flowers are known as heaven-connecting flowers. Their fragrance can help you concentrate and refine things. If you cultivate in a place where a lot of these flowers are planted, not only can they refine the energy within you, they can suppress your inner demons, providing you with a smooth path for cultivation, and your demons will not affect you, Ziying explained to Jian Chen. I want to take all these flowers away and then plant some at the Changyang clan and Inflamed City. Jian Chen immediately made up his mind. He understood extremely well just how valuable these flowers were. Qing Suo rolled her eyes at Jian Chen when she heard him. She giggled, "Master, these flowers aren't easy to plant. They can only survive in the soil of the Xianhuang microcosm, and they need to be watered by the water from springs of life. The spring water appears naturally in the Xianhuang microcosm, but they are consumable in other places. If Master really does plan on planting these flowers in all those places, Master'll need at least several thousand liters of spring water to water them so that they can survive." Jian Chen secretly became speechless. Providing the soil for the flowers was no problem, but he could not afford the water. However, Jian Chen did not want to let go of the flowers with how beneficial they were to cultivating. He did not take them all. Instead, he dug away several dozen square meters of flowers to replant in the artifact space. He even removed a lot of the soil in the surroundings just in case. Even thought it was just a few dozen square meters of flowers, he needed at least a few liters of spring water to support them every month. At this moment, Ziying's eyes suddenly froze. He stared at the extremely obscure tree that grew at the top of the hill and cried out, "That's a comprehension tea tree. I never thought that we'd come across one so quickly. Master, the tea that you make with the leaves of the comprehension tea tree is extremely precious. Ingesting the tea can assist people in comprehending the ways. Even in our former world, a few leaves from trees of higher grade would cause many experts to fight until they were bloodied and bruised. Master, if you have the assistance of the tea leaves, you'll be able to reach the first realm of the way of the sword in the shortest time possible once you forge the azulate swords." Chapter 1255, Class H. Xianhuang Beast. Jian Chen's gaze immediately landed on the highest point of the small hill, on the extremely obscure tree. His eyes immediately began to burn with desire. He did not even need to think about how great and valuable the tea leaves would be, since they could help him comprehend the way of the sword. Jian Chen used the illusory flash as he shot toward the highest point at an extremely fast speed. He was a blur. He was not far away from the tree, so he arrived right before it in a moment. There was actually a pool of water near the tree, and it was filled with green spring water. Both its size and depth exceeded the spring of life Jian Chen had come across in the small forest before. However, Jian Chen did not care at all despite finding a much larger spring of life. He did not even glance at it, only noticing its existence from the corner of his eye. Currently, the focus of his eyes was the comprehension tea tree. That was where he gathered all his attention. The tree was only a meter tall, but it was extremely sturdy. It possessed a thick layering of bark that did not match with its height and many branches. However, there were only 81 leaves scattered across the whole tree. On each leaf, there were 81 veins. These veins seemed to have grown naturally without a specified pattern, but with a close observation, they seemed to fuse and resonate with the world, like they possessed the infinite truths of the world. Jian Chen stared at the veins of the leaves, and gradually, his attention was drawn into them. In that moment, he seemed to have seen the pitch-black cosmos as the complicated and profound truths of the world flashed through his head. Vaguely, he felt like he had understood something, seen something, and grasped something. However, this feeling only lasted for a very short amount of time. When Jian Chen returned to his senses, he immediately discovered that the feeling just then had completely vanished without a trace. He was still the same, having not understood or grasped anything. Jian Chen gasped. The comprehension tea tree sure was extraordinarily wonderful. Just by staring at the veins of a leaf, he had experienced something like that, as if he was about to comprehend the truths of the world. If he drank the tea made from the leaves of the tree like the azulate sword spirits had said, wouldn't the effect increase by several-fold? On the Tian Yuan continent, Heaven Saint Masters needed to comprehend the mysteries of the world to reach Saint Ruler. Advancing to Saint King or even Saint Emperor required the comprehension of the mysteries of the world as well. It was just that the comprehension required was on whole different levels. Among the 3,000 great ways, the mysteries of the world comprehended by Saint Rulers, Saint Kings, and even Saint Emperors were all a way. Their rough control over space and the ability to use spatial force was a way as well, and Saint-tier battle skills also belonged to one of the ways. This was even the case for the 5 realms of the Way of the Sword. Not only could the tea leaves allow Jian Chen to comprehend the first realm of the Way of the Sword as quickly as possible, they were also beneficial to the cultivators on the Tian Yuan continent as well. The tea leaves could assist them in comprehending the mysteries of the world. Clearly, Jian Chen understood this, and he immediately became extremely excited. Although the spring water and flowers he had obtained were unbelievable treasures, they were nothing compared to the comprehension tea tree. At this moment, Jian Chen felt the ground beneath his feet tremble. Soon afterward, soil was suddenly kicked into the air several dozen meters away, revealing a hole that was a meter wide. A 3-meter-long, tiger-like Xianhuang beast that was completely pitch black with a single horn on its forehead leaped out. Its scarlet eyes shone with aggression as it stared fixedly at Jian Chen. It was filled with hostility and a powerful presence radiated from its body. Jian Chen stared at the Xianhuang beast that had suddenly appeared, and he felt slightly surprised. It had actually already reached the level of a 5th heavenly layer Saint King. However, it lacked intelligence and the abilities of Saint Kings, only possessing the instincts of a beast, so it only had the battle prowess of a 3rd heavenly layer Saint King at most. But since it was a Xianhuang beast born in the Xianhuang microcosm, even a 5th heavenly layer Saint King would need tremendous effort to slay it with the toughness of its body. Even though that was the case, the beast was still abnormally powerful. At the very least, Saint Emperors that came from the outside world would not even be able to flee before it, unless they were like Jian Chen and Tai Ta, whose strengths were not restricted. The Xianhuang beast pounded forward dexterously and immediately transformed into a blur, rushing over from several dozen meters away and arriving between Jian Chen and the comprehension tea tree. It constantly growled with deep rumble. Jian Chen understood what was happening when he saw what it did. Almost every region in the microcosm with life was protected by a few Xianhuang beasts. Just like the small forest he had passed through earlier, it was the same with this hill covered in various vegetation, and clearly, the hill where he stood was the territory of this Xianhuang beast. It was just that this beast was stronger than the 2 from before. The Xianhuang beast gave a deep growl in warning once again as it constantly raked one of its front paws against the ground. It held a stance that seemed like it was about to launch an attack, warning Jian Chen to leave. With its bestial instincts, it could clearly sense that Jian Chen was not easy to deal with, which was why it did not attack him as soon as it had seen him. Jian Chen coldly smiled. He needed to obtain the comprehension tea tree in front of him. He would not give up on it even if the Xianhuang beast was at the level of Saint Emperors, let alone a 5th heavenly layer Saint King. Jian Chen drew his Emperor armament from his space ring unhurriedly. Stabbing out, a sword chi a finger wide immediately shot out, striking the beast's head. It left behind a small gash. The bodies of Xianhuang beasts were extremely tough. Jian Chen's casual strike had made it bleed, but the small injury was basically nothing to it. However, it had become furious because of Jian Chen's attack. It roared before leaping toward Jian Chen with a wild gust of wind. Chapter 1256, Killing the Beast and Obtaining the Leaves. The bodies of Xianhuang beasts were extremely tough. Jian Chen's casual strike had made it bleed, but the small injury was basically nothing to it. However, it had become furious because of Jian Chen's attack. It roared before leaping toward Jian Chen with a wild gust of wind. Jian Chen did not continue to attack when he saw the Xianhuang beast lunge over. He gently kicked off the ground with the tip of his foot and drifted back as quickly as the Xianhuang beast, softly creating a beautiful curve in the air like a falling leaf as he landed away from the hill. When Jian Chen landed back on the ground, he was already several hundred meters away from the hill. However, he did not stop because of that. He kicked off with the tip of his foot again and began to fly back extremely quickly. The Xianhuang beast had become aggravated when Jian Chen had injured it. It pursued him without rest and constantly roared. However, it was unable to get within 10 meters of Jian Chen. Its speed was actually exactly the same as Jian Chen's speed, making it difficult for it to get any closer. After all, the Xianhuang beasts did not have any control over the mysteries of the world. They could not use spatial force to move faster. Jian Chen continued to back off as he pulled the beast away. He came to a stop 5 kilometers from the hill while staring at the Xianhuang beast with shining eyes. The beast did not seem to be a Class 8 vicious beast in his eyes. Instead, it appeared to be an extremely precious Class 8 monster core. Tai Ta stood in the sea of flowers on the hill several kilometers away. He glanced at Jian Chen before losing interest. He continued to sniff the flowers in a bent-over position. He closed his eyes as he greedily breathed in the heavy fragrance. He seemed to be intoxicated. A sword chi flashed to life several kilometers away from the hill. Jian Chen was already embroiled in a great battle with the Class 8 Xianhuang beast. The Emperor armament in his hands glowed bright. Its snow-white blade was like a mirror, reflecting its surroundings. Swish! Jian Chen stabbed out extremely quickly. With a flash of white light, the Emperor armament shot out like a bolt of lightning, shooting toward the beast's head. At the same time, the Xianhuang beast launched its own attack on Jian Chen. The attack was simple and concise, lacking any abilities. It opened its large mouth and bit at Jian Chen's weapon. Ding! As if it was a clash of metal, Jian Chen's Emperor armament was tightly gripped by the beast's sharp teeth. The toughness of its jaw was unimaginable. The Xianhuang beast forcefully twisted its head after it had gotten a hold of Jian Chen's Emperor armament in attempt to snap it. However, Emperor armaments were left behind by Saint Emperors, so no matter how hard the beast tried, it could not break the blade since the sword was even tougher than its jaws. Its teeth failed to leave a single mark on the Emperor armament. The Xianhuang beast seemed to have understood that it could not break Jian Chen's Emperor armament, so it simply yanked the weapon away. However, Jian Chen stood like a sword as he held on to the Emperor armament. No matter how hard the beast tried, it was unable to make Jian Chen take a simple step, but web-like cracks quickly spread out in all directions with his feet at the center. They reached several kilometers away. The Class 8 Xianhuang beast possessed shocking strength, but Jian Chen knew many skills. He stood there as if his feet were rooted to the ground, redirecting the force that the Xianhuang beast exerted on him into the ground. He achieved an effect where he seemed to be connected to the ground. It was impossible for the Xianhuang beast to be Jian Chen's opponent with just its bodily strength. Jian Chen sighed inside. If the beast in front of him possessed intelligence, killing it would take some effort, but it just happened to lack that. All it possessed was great strength that could only follow its bestial instincts, so dealing with it was easy. Suddenly, Jian Chen's gaze grew cold, and he suddenly channeled some energy through his sword-wielding hand. He raised the beast, which was still biting the blade, high up in the air. He quickly spun in a circle a few times before smashing it against the ground. It created a huge crater, but the beast's jaws remained tightly locked around the weapon. Jian Chen arrived before it with a single step. He raised his foot high up into the air before viciously stopping on the Xianhuang beast's head. The force was abnormally great, burying the beast's head deep into the soil below. Roar! The Xianhuang beast was angered by Jian Chen's stomp, so it produced an earth-shaking roar. It finally let go of the Emperor armament as it bit at Jian Chen's foot. Jian Chen coldly smiled. He avoided the huge mouth of the beast as he coated the Emperor armament with a layer of chaotic force, taking advantage of its attack to stab the beast in the head. This time, Jianchen felt an even greater resistance. The beast's head was unbelievably tough. Jianchen believed that even steel that had been forged countless times would not be as tough as this beast's head. This was because Jianchen could split any type of steel, no matter how great, into two with a simple stroke of his blade like a hot knife through butter. However, Jianchen had to use a lot of force, including chaotic force, on the Xianhuang beast's head, and he was only able to stab half of the sword in, just happening to reach the center of the beast's head. Jianchen did not give the Xianhuang beast the chance to struggle one final time. Sword chi formed from chaotic force surged from the Emperor armament, reducing the head of the beast into a mess in a single moment. The fifth heavenly layer Saint King Xianhuang beast died in the end without even being able to let out a miserable wail. Jianchen found a thumb-sized energy crystal within the beast's body. Only after sensing the powerful and energetic ripples of energy did he nod in satisfaction. The energy within the crystal was equivalent to a Class 8 monster core. Class 8 monster cores were extremely rare on the Tianyuan continent. Only the Gilligan clan was in possession of one or two Class 8 magical beasts. Chapter 1257, Reconstruction Gel. After removing the energy crystal from the Xianhuang beast's corpse, Jianchen tossed the carcass into his space ring. He had obtained a Class 7 and 8 monster core in less than half a day after coming here, which delighted him very much. At the same time, he believed that there would definitely be even more Class 7 and 8 Xianhuang beasts as he progressed further into the depths. That way, he would be able to obtain more and more of these energy crystals. He might even be able to break through to the fourth layer using the energy crystals from the Xianhuang microcosm. Although Jianchen had managed to increase his chaotic Niden from the size of a chicken egg to the size of a fist and reached the peak of the third layer back in the whirlpool of energy, it did not increase his battle prowess at all. It only made the chaotic force he could store in his Dantian reach to a limit. Only by breaking through and reaching the fourth layer could his strength increase. Jianchen returned to the hill. His battle with the Class 8 Xianhuang beast was extremely short, having ended in less than a minute. Tai Ta remained in the sea of flowers. He was intoxicated by the fragrance so much that he could not return to himself. Jianchen glanced at Tai Ta from quite far away and did not disturb him. He knew that Tai Ta was no weaker than him right now, but the matters he had experienced and the heavenly resources he had come across were nowhere near as plentiful. The fragrance of the heaven-connecting flowers was extremely attractive to someone who had not come across various heavenly resources before, let alone Tai Ta, who had rarely ever come across any of them. This was why Tai Ta's immunity for the flowers was not as great as his own. Jianchen arrived in front of the comprehension tea tree and was about to begin collecting the leaves. The reason why he had fought the Xianhuang beast 5 kilometers away was because he was afraid that the ripples of battle would damage the tree. He did not want such a valuable comprehension tea tree to be destroyed by his own carelessness. Master, the comprehension tea leaves are rather different from regular heavenly resources. You must not use your hands to touch the leaves when you collect them. You must use their branches instead. At the same time, you cannot use jade boxes to store them. It would be best if you used wooden boxes created from the trees that naturally grow in the Xianhuang microcosm, Ziying warned Jianchen. He was afraid that Jianchen would store the tea leaves like any other heavenly resource and either ruin its quality as a result or destroy them entirely. Jianchen immediately used the Emperor armament to chop down a 30-centimeter wide tree nearby. The trees in the Xianhuang microcosm were extremely tough. Jianchen needed to swing the sword several times to cut through the tree that was only as thick as his waist. Afterward, he hollowed out a piece of wood and created a simple and extremely rough-looking box before returning to the location of comprehension tea tree. He gently snapped off a few branches of the tree and used them as chopsticks, removing the leaves one by one. The leaves of the comprehension tea tree took an extremely long time to grow. They would only grow back after 10,000 years. However, This also meant that basically every time the worldly ebb descended, the trees would be covered in leaves again, so Jian Chen did not hold back. He removed all 81 leaves on the tree and carefully stored them in his wooden box before sealing it up with self-crafted wooden nails. Master, these comprehension tea leaves are only of the first grade of the immortal tier. They're the lowest quality in the entire Xianhuang microcosm. You'll definitely come across trees of higher quality as you head further into the depths. Different quality leaves need to be stored separately, so it's best if you make a few more boxes, Qing Suo explained to Jian Chen. As a result, Jian Chen made a few more simple boxes from the remaining wood, around a dozen just in case. Every single one of them was around half the size of his body, so they could easily store several hundred tea leaves. Jian Chen originally planned to take the tree with him and plant in the outside world, but he could only give up on that idea after he learned from the azulate sword spirits that the tree could only grow within the Xianhuang microcosm, and it would immediately wilt if it left the realm. Clearly, comprehension tea trees could not be planted like the heaven-connecting flowers. In the end, Jian Chen left behind the bare comprehension tea tree. It stood all by itself on top of the hill. Although its trunk was filled with vigor, there was not a single leaf left. It seemed like an old man who had all his hair plucked out. Afterward, Jian Chen arrived before the spring of life several dozen meters away. The pool was much larger than the one he had come across in the small forest, and it contained several times more spring water as well, reaching over 500 liters. A ball of essence sat at the bottom of the pool as well. Jian Chen immediately pulled out several storage containers from his space ring to collect the spring water. He removed around 250 liters, half of the total again. He obviously did not miss the essence either. Jian Chen checked through the lair of the Xianhuang beast after collecting the spring water, but he found nothing. He then called over Tai Ta to leave. He continued into the depths of the region by following the sword spirit's directions. But after traveling for 10 kilometers, Jian Chen finally came across the other material that the sea goddess needed to reconstruct her body. It was a white substance the size of a fist and slightly transparent. It was soft to the touch and elastic, but it was extremely tough at the same time. Jian Chen was unable to rip it in half when he used all his force. Master, this is called reconstruction gel. It can reconstruct the bodies of people. It's something extremely common in our former world, but we never thought that the sea goddess mentioned by Master would understand the usages of this gel. She really has surprised us, said Ziying. Chapter 1258, Recurrence of the Nine-Colored Clouds. Jian Chen immediately collected the reconstruction gel. Although it was extremely common in the former world of the sword spirits, it was probably something that would never appear on the Tianyuan continent. It's just a pity that there's only fist-sized amount of this gel. It's nowhere near enough to reconstruct the sea goddess body. I'll need to collect as much of this gel and essence from the springs of life as possible in the future, Jian Chen mumbled to himself before continuing on his way with Tai Ta. Back on the Tianyuan continent, Changyang Ba and Jian Chen's mother, Bai Yuntian, currently sat in the conference hall of the Changyang clan with several sagely old men in luxurious robes as they conversed. Because Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian had managed to give birth to an extremely impressive son, they had already become figures that could create a great sensation. Even though their strength was nothing on the Tianyuan continent, the respect they deserved even exceeded the kings of the 8 great kingdoms. Before the two of them, even the Saint King ancestors of ancient clans needed to show some respect and lower themselves to be on friendly terms. They dared not to offend them. The sagely old men that currently spoke with them were the saint rulers of the closest ancient clan to the Jessen kingdom. They had come under the orders of their ancestor with precious gifts to visit the patriarch of the clan and the 4th madam. Saint rulers were all hermit experts on the Tianyuan continent. It was common for them to not appear within a century, and some people could even go their entire lives without catching a glimpse of a saint ruler's glory. There were no saint rulers that watched over any organizations in the Jessen kingdom apart from the Changyang clan. If it was before, Changyang Ba would have needed to nod and bow while speaking carefully. He would have been fearful of offending a saint ruler with just one wrong word and drawing disaster upon his clan. But now, not only did the two of them stand on equal ground with saint rulers of ancient clans, able to converse without any fear, they could even show dissatisfaction. That was how glorious and prideful they had become. It had been more than once that they felt prideful for their impressive son, because they both knew very well that the status of the clan and their own glory was all brought on by their son, Jian Chen, himself. If they did not have Jian Chen, the current Changyang clan would probably be so insignificant that they would have been trampled by the Huayan sect, which only had 2 heaven saint masters. Patriarch, Madam Bai, we shall bid farewell. Our ancestor of the Yunhe clan has personally told us to tell the Patriarch and Madam that you are welcome to visit our clan any time. We will definitely welcome you with the greatest etiquette. We hope that we can be on good terms with your great clan and the esteemed young master forever and become the greatest of friends. The saint rulers from the ancient clans stood up and clasped their hands at the couple. They spoke extremely politely. Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian hurried to return the gesture, but they were completely calm since experts of ancient and Hermit clans had constantly visited them over the past few years. They had received saint rulers countless times, and even the Saint King ancestor of the Tianmu clan had paid them a personal visit. At this very moment, a powerful ripple of energy suddenly emerged from the back courtyards of the Changyang clan. Even with the formations and barriers, it was not concealed. The saint rulers who were about to leave immediately became surprised. They were shocked by the powerful ripple of energy. It was just far too powerful. With their understanding, even saint rulers at the 9th heavenly layer could not emit such powerful ripples of energy. Patriarch, Madam Bai, may I ask what this is about? One of the old men asked out of curiosity. Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian looked at each other. They had obviously felt the ripple of energy come from the back courtyard, but that had already become the forbidden grounds of the Changyang clan. Other than their son, no one in the clan could casually set foot there, so they had no idea what was happening there. Look at the sky outside. Suddenly, one of the saint rulers cried out as he pointed at the sky outside the hall. Everyone immediately shifted their gazes and saw that a layer of colorful clouds had already flooded the deep blue sky in a silent manner. There was a total of 7 colors. They are 7-colored rainbow clouds. It's the sign of someone reaching Saint King. Someone's broken through to Saint King. Is there really another person breaking through to Saint King in the Changyang clan? The saint rulers of the Yunhe clan all cried out as unhideable admiration appeared plastered across their faces. In this era that lacked saint emperors, Saint Kings had basically become the greatest experts of the continent, existences that stood at the apex. Even though it was just breaking through to Saint King, just overcoming the gap between Saint Ruler and Saint King made reaching the 9th heavenly layer of Saint King and standing on the apex of the continent a possibility. The rainbow clouds had appeared silently and covered a radius of several hundred kilometers. Even the Saint Kings in Mercenary City that was 1,000,000 kilometers away could sense it. The new Grand Elder of Mercenary City hovered above the land as he stared in the direction of the Jessan Kingdom in interest. He mumbled, from today on, another Saint King has appeared on the Tian Yuan continent. I just wonder who it is. The 4 imperial protectors of the Qin Huang Kingdom silently hovered above the 4 Qin heaven palaces as they stared silently in the direction of the Jessan Kingdom. Admiration filled all of their eyes. Every saint ruler wished that they could become a Saint King one day and truly stand at the apex of the continent. Unfortunately, there were many people who would end up stuck at the 9th heavenly layer, and there were only a few who could truly overcome the barrier of becoming a Saint King. Aside from them, all the saint rulers who had sensed that someone was about to become a Saint King hovered high up in the air in various places across the continent. They all stared blankly at the horizon. A long whistle rang out from the back courtyard of the Changyang clan. A figure shot into the sky with lightning-like speed and bathed in endless light. It was an extremely impressive sight. The figure was a beautiful woman. Even though she seemed to have reached middle age, she was still extremely pretty. She was Changyang Zhu Yayan. She had been stuck at the 9th heavenly layer of Saint Ruler for many years already. Her mental state had been incomplete because she was always thinking about her son, Changyang Zhu Yunkong, which was why she never broke through. Not only had her son returned safely, even the seal in his head had been removed, so her greatest dream of many years had been fulfilled. Now that her mental state was complete, she had finally become a Saint King. At this moment, a space gate suddenly appeared. Changyang Zhu Yunxiao, who had been tasked with watching over the royal palace of the Jessen kingdom, rushed back as soon as possible. The gaze he used to look at Changyang Zhu Yayan was filled with excitement. Not only did reaching Saint King bring on an increase in strength, it also brought an increase of life. Saint Kings could live longer. Another Saint Kings appeared for the Changyang clan. The saint rulers from the Yunhe clan all sighed emotionally. However, only a short while after the 7-colored clouds had appeared for Changyang Zhu Yayan when she became a Saint King, they rapidly dispersed. Soon after, rainbow clouds of even brighter colors suddenly filled the sky, stretching even further. This time, the clouds engulfed the entire continent, and they had increased to 9 colors instead of the 7 from earlier. The 9 colors merged together to form the most beautiful scene ever. The clouds dyed the entire world with different colors and blotted out the sun. The joy on Changyang Zhu Yayan and Changyang Zhu Yunxiao's faces immediately froze. They stared blankly at the 9-colored clouds as disbelief filled their faces. Changyang Zhu Xiao appeared silently in the sky. He also stared at the clouds in shock as his expression became extremely mixed. Chapter 1259, The Third Saint Emperor, 9-Colored Clouds. It's actually the 9-colored rainbow clouds. Has another person reached Saint Emperor on the Tian Yuan continent? Several saint rulers flew out of the forbidden grounds of the Changyang clan and wondered aloud while staring at the clouds that stretched across the continent. These saint rulers were all people who had broken away from the protector Changyang clan with Changyang Zhu Xiao and Changyang Zhu Yunxiao. All of them were members of the Zhu branch, and any single one of them would possess terrifying seniority among the Changyang clan of Lore City. All of them were Jian Chen's great-grandfathers. Staring blankly at the rainbow clouds in the sky, Changyang Zhu Yayan revealed an extremely interesting expression. Today should have been the day where she celebrated reaching Saint King. The descent of the 7-colored clouds would have informed the entire world that another Saint King had been born on the continent. However, she had never thought that as soon as the clouds that celebrated her breakthrough appeared, they would be completely engulfed by 9-colored rainbow clouds. Changyang Zhu Yayan had no clue how to describe how she felt because of this. Houston reached Saint Emperor only recently, having become the second one of the Tian Yuan continent. I never thought that another Saint Emperor would appear on the Tian Yuan continent so soon. This really is unbelievable. Is breaking through to Saint Emperor really that easy now? Changyang Zhu Yunxiao looked at the sky as he asked with mixed feelings. Changyang Zhu Xiao gently sighed. From now on, our Tian Yuan continent will have 3 Saint Emperors. I just wonder who the person who has broken through is. Does he belong to the protector clans? Or does he belong to some other organization? Or maybe he's even in the independent cultivator. Now that our Tian Yuan continent has 3 Saint Emperors, our absolute strength is on par to the Beast God continent. It doesn't matter who he is, he'll increase the strength of our continent at the very least. Now if the Beast God continent tries to invade the Tian Yuan continent again, they better think it over properly, said Changyang Zhu Yayan. Although her glory for reaching Saint King had been overshadowed by a Saint Emperor, she did not become annoyed at all. Instead, she became rather happy. If the 7-colored rainbow clouds Changyang Zhu Yayan's breakthrough to Saint King had led to a few emotional sighs among all the Saint Kings, the appearance of the 9-colored rainbow clouds had thrown the entire continent into a commotion again. It shocked all the Saint Kings, and they experienced both admiration and envy inside. Saint Emperor was a realm that was unreachable in the eyes of all saint rulers, but it was the realm that all Saint Kings strived for on the Tian Yuan continent. It was just that breaking through was extremely difficult. The continent, with its enormous population, had given birth to many geniuses. Reaching the great perfection of Saint King for them was no difficulty, but reaching Saint Emperor was virtually impossible. Just when the Grand Elder in the air was about leave Mercenary City, he discovered that the rainbow clouds in the sky had dissipated and had been replaced by 9-colored rainbow clouds. The Grand Elder obviously knew what the 9-colored clouds represented extremely well. He immediately became stunned as he stared at the clouds blankly. He remained rather dazed for quite some time. It had been less than half a year since Houston had become a Saint Emperor, yet another Saint Emperor had appeared on the Tianyuan continent now. This made it rather difficult for Saint Kings, who were used to Saint Emperors only appearing once every 1,000 years or several thousand years, to accept. The space around the Grand Elder began to ripple, and in just a few seconds, several dozen experts had already appeared around him. None of them were weaker than Saint Rulers, and there were even several Saint Kings sandwiched between them. All the experts of Mercenary City had been drawn out by the descent of the 9-colored clouds. Another person's become a Saint Emperor. I wonder who it is. In 3 days, we will know who has become a Saint Emperor, 2 of the Saint Kings murmured after feeling stunned for quite some time. All the Saint Kings from the 3 great empires, protector clans, and ancient clans emerged from seclusion, including some independent Saint Kings who dwelled in desolate mountains. An extremely run-down thatched hut stood silently in an ancient forest that was always enshrouded by mist. The sounds of magical beasts would constantly ring out, including deafening roars that would reverberate across the sky from time to time. These were the roars of Class 6 magical beasts, and there were more than just one of them. However, all of these magical beasts gathered around the thatched hut. Even though the hut sat exactly where the energy of the world was most abundant in the forest, none of the magical beasts dared to step a single foot closer. They maintained a distance of 3,000 meters from the hut. At this moment, an ordinary-looking old man covered with wrinkles and wearing coarse robes emerged from the hut. He looked at the sky as a gleam of light shone across his ancient eyes. However, he then deeply sighed. I never thought that someone else would reach Saint Emperor so quickly. I've already been stuck at great perfection for several hundred years, and I don't have much time left, but I still can't break through. I wonder if I'll have the chance to become a Saint Emperor. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. The 9-colored clouds remained in the sky, but an odd ripple spread across the land from far away. Without any hesitation, all the Saint Kings ripped open space to create space gates to reach the origin of the ripple. Many of them wanted to know just who had become a Saint Emperor. At this moment, a white-robed, middle-aged man sat on the tip of a sword-shaped mountain in an ancient mountain range several million kilometers away from Mercenary City. He radiated with an extremely vast presence, and an extremely terrifying energy pulsed from his body in an unstable manner. It would surge out of him from time to time, causing the space around him to violently shake. Space gates opened one after another several thousand meters away from him. From them emerged Saint Kings from everywhere. There were experts from Mercenary City, the 3 great empires, the ancient clans, the protector clans, and even some independent Saint Kings. As soon as the people arrived there, their gazes landed on the middle-aged man who sat on the mountain peak. Many of them immediately revealed a different expression. Its great elder Tianjian, a Saint King from Mercenary City, immediately cried out. Chapter 1260, Shocking Changes of Mercenary City. The Saint Kings from Mercenary City immediately became emotional while excitement appeared on their faces, because the person who had become a Saint Emperor this time was their great elder, Jian Chen. Fantastic, fantastic. Great Elder Tianjian has finally made a breakthrough in his final moments of his life and has become a Saint Emperor. He now possesses 10,000 years of life. Our Mercenary City finally has a Saint Emperor from now on. The Saint Kings from Mercenary City were completely overjoyed when they saw Tianjian, who radiated with the presence of a Saint Emperor. From how they reacted, it was as if the person who had broken through was not Tianjian but themselves. However, the people of the protector clans became anguished. Other than the Saint Kings from the Pure Heart Pavilion and the Tyrant's Blade School, as well as Changyang Zhu Yunshao, Changyang Zhu Yeyun, and Changyang Zhu Shao, who had hurried over from Jessen Kingdom, the Saint Kings of the 7 other protector clans all revealed very ugly expressions. It was definitely a major matter for Mercenary City now that Tianjian had become a Saint Emperor, but this was not something most people from the protector clans wished to see. They wanted the Saint Emperor to belong to any of the protector clans other than Mercenary City. This was because Mercenary City was in possession of a supreme divine hall. This divine hall had been left behind by Mo Tianyun in ancient times, and its toughness completely exceeded any divine hall on the Tianyuan continent, having reached an unimaginable level. Even Saint Emperors could not leave a single mark on the divine hall when they used their full strength, and probably only sovereign-like figures that had surpassed Saint Emperor and stepped into the origin realm could smash through it. Not only did the toughness of the divine hall make all Saint Emperors despair, it possessed something else that no other divine hall on the Tianyuan continent had, which was offensive capabilities. Not only could it repel any attacks from Saint Emperors, it could automatically attack as well. Many years ago, a great battle had once erupted between Mercenary City and the 10 protector clans. In that battle, all the protector clans worked together to beat Mercenary City into a retreat. In the final stage, a Saint Emperor from Mercenary City used the Supreme Divine Hall and managed to slay over 10 Saint Emperors from the protector clans all by himself. This matter shook the entire continent and consolidated Mercenary City's unmovable status on the continent. In the eyes of the protector clans, the divine hall of Mercenary City was even more terrifying than the barrier spirit. This was because the barrier spirit only guarded Mercenary City. It was a defensive force and would never launch an offensive without reason. However, the divine hall was different. Once Mercenary City possessed a Saint Emperor, they would have the power to move the divine hall to anywhere. Even using it to attack the protector clans was completely possible. Even during the age when all 10 protector clans were glorious and possessed Saint Emperors, Mercenary City was invincible through the divine hall. Yet, the protector clans were just a shell of their former selves now, lacking a single Saint Emperor. Even if they used all the heritage they had gathered over the years, they would not be able to rival the divine hall of Mercenary City with their puny strength. Although they knew that it was impossible for Mercenary City to act against the protector clans, their balance had been broken now. They needed to take precautions. At this moment, Tianjian slowly withdrew his vast presence. Even the energy that rippled in him was erased. He controlled the energy that had suddenly erupted from reaching Saint Emperor earlier. Soon afterward, he slowly opened his eyes. They were extremely nonchalant looking but also dark and profound, like ink. Congratulations on becoming a Saint Emperor, Great Elder Tianjian. As soon as Tianjian stood up, all the Saint Kings who watched from afar came up to congratulate him. Their voices were filled with deep admiration. The other Saint Kings had no particular thoughts on Tianjian becoming a Saint Emperor since a Saint Emperor in Mercenary City did not affect them at all. Only the Saint Kings of the 10 protector clans did. Even if Mercenary City did not have a Saint Emperor like before, these Saint Kings were still vast existences that could not be provoked. The Saint Kings of the protector clans came up to congratulate him as well. Although many of them did not wish to have a Saint Emperor appear for Mercenary City, they still needed to lower their heads. Several million kilometers away in Mercenary City, the commotion caused by the clouds had completely subsided, but there were still many people who discussed the legends regarding the 9-colored clouds. There were even more people who discussed just who had become a Saint Emperor, what his background was, and so on. Probably no one among the lowest mercenaries and small clans knew what the 9-colored clouds represented, but it was no secret to most people in Mercenary City. This was because a lot of people who gathered in the city came from hermit or even ancient clans. They had all heard the legend regarding the rainbow clouds that accompanied breakthroughs to Saint Ruler and beyond. As a result, a few people could be heard discussing about how some great person had reached Saint Emperor in the inns and streets of the city. Some said that this new Saint Emperor came from the 10 protector clans, others said they came from an ancient clan, and there were even some others who said that they were independent. In short, no one had thought that it was the great elder of Mercenary City since they all believed that the breakthrough would have occurred within the city if it was a member of Mercenary City. All the Saint Kings of Mercenary City had basically left the city to learn who had become the Saint Emperor, so clearly, the Saint Emperor was not a part of Mercenary City. Just as everyone was energetically discussing the new Saint Emperor, the city suddenly began to shake violently, as if a great earthquake was happening. The ground shook a lot and many people had almost tripped from being caught off guard. What's this? What's happening? Earthquake. Earthquake. Mercenary City is going through an earthquake. Bullshit. What kind of place do you think Mercenary City is? Don't forget that it's guarded by the powerful barrier spirit, so how can an earthquake happen here? Everyone immediately became greatly shocked by the quaking city. Many of them ran out onto the streets frantically and glanced around in doubt and surprise. None of the people in Mercenary City were weak. Let alone a mere earthquake. They had even witnessed mountain-collapsing tsunamis that were even more terrifying than any earthquake. The reason why they had all become so frantic over this sudden earthquake was because they were in no ordinary city. They were in Mercenary City. They all understood that Mercenary City was protected by a powerful barrier. Since ancient times, the barrier had never been destroyed by anyone, which was why there was no exaggeration in calling Mercenary City the safest place on the continent. In all the years that the city had been guarded by the barrier, everything had been peaceful. No one had ever heard about an earthquake. Rumble. At this moment, a heavy sound rang out from the depths of the city. With the sound, the city began to violently tremble even more. The entire city now shook, and the trembling was so great that even a few Earth Saint Masters struggled to maintain their balance. Huge, thick cracks had appeared on the ground and were increasing, growing more and more dense until they became web-like, riddling all the streets and alleyways with fissures. Even quite a few of the structures in the city had been affected by the ripple, and tiny cracks appeared in the corners before quickly spreading across the entire structure. Chapter 1261. The protective barrier disappears. Everyone leave Mercenary City immediately, a clear voice rang out from afar. It originated from a Heaven Saint Master who was in the city, and he yelled extremely loudly. His voice basically reached all of the city. All the people in the city returned to their senses with that. They all looked at the rapidly expanding cracks in the ground. No one dared to stay any longer in the city, all moving away. All of them moved as quickly as they could. Ever since the city had been founded, it had always been peaceful, yet such a violent earthquake had actually occurred now. This was far too abnormal. Almost everyone sensed that some great change was about to happen. Swish! With the whistling of wind, a Heaven Saint Master flew through the air coated by barely visible, azure-colored, wind-attributed saint force. He shot through the air as an azure streak of light, quickly flying to the outskirts. My God, that guy's crazy. He's actually flying in Mercenary City. Isn't he afraid of the punishment from the barrier? Even if he's fleeing for his life, there's no need to do that. Doesn't he know that flight is forbidden in the city? Flight is an ability that only the upper echelon of Mercenary City can enjoy, and none of them are weaker than saint rulers. Not only is this person a Heaven Saint Master, he's not a member of Mercenary City either. He's done for. That Heaven Saint Master is going to be in trouble. Let's see just what punishment he suffers next. Many people who fled sneered inside as they watched the Heaven Saint Master fly. Many of them were prepared to see the outcome of the Heaven Saint Master soon. Among the people who fled, there were many Heaven Saint Master, but all of them had chosen to run on the ground. There was no one bold enough to fly in the city. However, the people who were ready for a good show kept waiting. But not only did the flying Heaven Saint Master escape without any of the imagined punishments, he even flew out of the city in an extremely short amount of time. What's this about? This Heaven Saint Master hasn't suffered any punishment from the barrier. Are the rumors false? No, it's impossible for the rumors to be false. 10 years ago, I personally witnessed a Heaven Saint Master flying through the city become heavily injured by a bolt created by the barrier's energy in the sky. Was that Heaven Saint Master some important member of Mercenary City? Is that why there was a special exception? A black-robed old man asked in doubt. He was also a Heaven Saint Master, but he dared not to fly. He also ran quickly along the ground with everyone else. Everyone look, the barrier of the city has vanished. Suddenly, an alarmed cry rang out from afar. Everyone raised their heads immediately after that, but when they saw the sky, all of their mouths hung agape as disbelief flooded their faces. This was because the huge barrier that had always enveloped the city was rapidly fadden. In less than 5 seconds, it had actually disappeared without a trace, despite existing for countless years without any accidents. All the people sank inside when they saw this. This was an extremely horrible omen. Almost all of them could sense that some shocking changes were about to happen to the city, and as soon as they thought about that, everyone sped up a little. Without the threat of the barrier, many Heaven Saint Masters became fearless. They took to the sky as various streams of light. At the same time, several dozen saint rulers hovered high in the air at the center of the city. They were extremely stern as they glanced between the vanished barrier and the trembling ground from time to time. What's happening to our mercenary city? Why has the protective barrier suddenly vanished, and why has such a great earthquake suddenly occurred? A saint ruler involuntarily questioned. He stared at the huge cracks a palm wide that riddled the city. They all knew that the piece of earth that the city sat on had been protected by the barrier through all ages, causing the ground to become rock hard. Even saint rulers could not leave a mark if they used everything they had, yet the ground had now been reduced to such a sorry state. All of them were left in disbelief. Quickly use a secret technique and contact the Grand Elder and everyone else, a saint ruler commanded in a hurry. Although they were part of the upper echelon of the city, all of them were saint rulers. All the saint kings had left the city, so they could do nothing about the sudden changes with their mere strength as saint rulers. All the saint kings remained gathered in the ancient mountain ranges where Tianjian had become a saint emperor. They all congratulated him and asked for guidance in regards to Tianjian's experience of becoming a saint emperor. The several saint kings from Mercenary City were all excited and smiled more brightly than anyone else. It was extremely significant for Mercenary City for Tianjian to become a saint king. But at this moment, the Grand Elder's face suddenly changed in a drastic way. He had received a message through a secret technique from Mercenary City and learned of the great changes. The Grand Elder's complexion immediately became extremely horrible. He turned to the Saint Kings beside him and said, "Something bad's happened. Mercenary City has undergone an upheaving change. Elders, immediately head back to the city as soon as possible. We cannot waste any time at all." "All right, we'll hurry back immediately." The Saint Kings from Mercenary City could see how severe the situation was from how the Grand Elder had lost his composure. Without any hesitation, they immediately constructed a space gate and hurried back. The Grand Elder did not return with them. With a flash, he arrived by Tianjian's side and said through a communication technique, "Great Elder, I've just received a message from Mercenary City. The city is undergoing great changes. The protective barrier has vanished while the entire city is violently trembling. The ground has cracked and the city is in ruins." The Grand Elder spoke extremely sternly. If he had not been certain that the person who sent him the message would not lie, he would be doubting the reality of the matter right now. This was because this was an unprecedented event ever since the founding of the city. Tianjian's expression changed as well because of what the Grand Elder had said. He could not help but think back to the matter Jian Chen had mentioned before, about how the tunnel to the world of Forsaken Saints had been sealed deep underneath the city and how an earthquake had already occurred back when he was Grand Elder. However, it had occurred and ended very quickly and did not cause too great of a commotion. Has the seal beneath Mercenary City been broken? Tianjian suddenly thought of this matter and his heart immediately sank. He heavily replied, "Grand Elder, let's return to the city immediately." Before he had even finished speaking, Tianjian began to construct a space gate, quickly stepping through it as he pulled the Grand Elder along. "Everyone, please gather in Mercenary City immediately. I have some important matters to discuss with you all." Just as the space gate was about to close, Tianjian's voice rang out, landing in all the ears of the Saint Kings present. All of them looked at each other. They had been stunned by the abnormal actions of the Saint Kings from Mercenary City. Tianjian and the Saint Kings of Mercenary City have left in such a hurry. Has something happened to the city? A Saint King from an ancient clan asked in doubt. Mercenary City has always been guarded by the protective barrier that even Saint Emperors cannot smash through. In terms of defenses, even the protector clans cannot match up against them. It would be slightly reasonable if you said that something had happened to the protector clans, but it's an absolute joke if you're talking about Mercenary City, a dignified old man in golden dragon robes chuckled. He was the ancestral emperor of the Felicity Empire and was extremely powerful. He was at the peak of the 8th heavenly layer and about to reach the 9th. Quite a few people from the protector clans immediately became displeased by what the ancestral emperor had said, but none of them dared to say anything in response. This was because the ancestral emperor was correct. In terms of defensive measures, the protector clans were not on the same level as Mercenary City. When they faced the sneak attacks from the experts of the 100 races, they were not even able to stop a small group of Saint Kings with just the strength of a single protector clan. On the other hand, Mercenary City had managed to block the attacks from all the invaders with just a barrier. Even the simultaneous attacks from several forbidden artifacts could not even shake the barrier, which was more than enough to see how terrifyingly tough the barrier was. Everyone, let's gather in Mercenary City since Great Elder Tianjian has invited us, the ancestral emperor added at the end. He left with the 2 other Saint Kings from the Felicity Empire, heading to Mercenary City. Chapter 1262, Gathering at Mercenary City. It's not like we have anything better to do. Let's check out Mercenary City and see just what's happened that's caused these elders to leave in such a hurry. Plus, this is a personal invitation from Great Elder Tianjian. Everyone needs to respect him. Don't you think so? A Saint King from the Padian sect of the 10 protector clans said aloud as he glanced at the independent Saint Kings around him. Even before they had a Saint Emperor, Mercenary City vaguely stood supreme in regard to the protector clans. Now that they had a Saint Emperor, they were incomparable to the past, so even the protector clans needed to treat Mercenary City politely. Sure. Great Elder Tianjian used to be a well-respected person on the Tian Yuan continent, let alone now. I don't think any of us present will turn down Great Elder Tianjian's invitation, and since he said he has something important to discuss before he left, it must be something significant. After all, I do trust that he's not someone who likes to tell lies. You never know, the important matter that Great Elder Tianjian might be wanting to speak to us about might just be his experience and knowledge of becoming a Saint Emperor. A red-faced old man laughed aloud. He was one of the great elders from the Heaven's Incense School. He also glanced at all the independent cultivators when he said that, clearly directing what he had said at them. On the Tian Yuan continent, regardless of the protector clans, ancient clans, or the 3 great empires, they all would never turn down an invitation from Mercenary City. After all, they were people with large organizations behind them and none of them wanted to offend Mercenary City, which basically reigned supreme. However, this was different for independent cultivators who belonged to no organization and were not bound or restricted by anything. They would hide all year round in desolate regions to cultivate. Among them, there were quite a few prideful and odd-mannered people who did not fear Mercenary City. Many people present understood that the 2 Saint Kings had stepped forward to express their stance on Mercenary City through the words they had just spoken. Afterward, all the Saint Kings from the 10 protector clans, the ancient clans, the 3 empires, and so on ripped open space gates and hurried away. All of them headed to Mercenary City. Soon afterward, only the several dozen independent Saint Kings were present. They were indeed rather unwilling to follow through with Tianjian's invitation. They were used to living freely and acting as they wished without participating in the battles between any large organizations. Even if Tianjian had said he had something important to discuss, many of them still believed that it had nothing to do with them. However, after what the 2 Saint Kings from the Padian sect and Heaven's Incense School had said, many of them immediately changed their minds. They were not afraid of offending Mercenary City since it was a famed superpower and would not hold a grudge against them over these small matters. What really changed their minds was what the Saint King from the Heaven's Incense School had said. Even though many of them understood that Tianjian would never pass on his experience and knowledge of becoming a Saint Emperor to them, just the temptation of becoming a Saint Emperor was far too difficult to resist. Even though they knew it was impossible, they still grasped at that tiny amount of hope. As a result, the independent Saint Kings hesitated slightly before all ripping open space gates as well, heading to Mercenary City. Tianjian and the Saint Kings of Mercenary City had all returned to the city. All of them sternly stared at the trembling ground with extremely ugly expressions. The protective barrier of the city had vanished, and even the terrifying energy hidden within the ground had disappeared, making the ground become extremely fragile. Now, because of the violent trembling, it had already cracked. From a higher altitude, the ground of the entire city seemed like a huge spider web. The structures built on it were ruined or had collapsed, and the beautiful city had ceased to exist. It was in a disastrous state. At this moment, the Saint Kings from the Protector clans, the three empires, and the ancient clans all arrived in Mercenary City. As soon as they had emerged from their space gates, they became stunned by the drastic changes to the city. Disbelief filled all their faces, and they struggled to return to their senses even after quite a while. Finally, a Saint King from a Protector clan managed to snap back to his senses before everyone else. He secretly gasped and arrived beside Tianjian. With his hands clasped, he asked, "Great Elder Tianjian, what has happened? Why has Mercenary City suddenly become like this?" The Saint King had asked the question weighing on everyone's mind. Immediately, all the people looked at Tianjian. Tianjian said nothing. He stared sternly at the ground beneath him as the light in his eyes flickered. Boom! At this moment, another heavy sound reverberated from deep beneath Mercenary City. The ground began to shake even more as strands of terrifying energy, enough to make all the Saint Kings shiver, began to leak from the ground. Even though it was just strands of weak energy ripples, they had completely surpassed the level of Saint Emperors. What terrifying energy! Just what is beneath the ground? A Saint King from an ancient clan asked with a sheet-white face. He could feel that he was as insignificant as an ant before a strand of one ripple of this energy, which made him shiver inside. At this moment, an extremely powerful ripple of energy erupted from beneath the city. A 3-meter-wide hole suddenly appeared on the cracked ground, and soon afterward, 4 figures quickly floated out surrounded by an extremely powerful energy. In the end, they were sent to Tianjian's side, and the energy around them silently vanished. The 4 of them were Ming Dong, Yang Ling, Changyang Zhu Yunkong, and Huang Tianba, who had all been cultivating beneath the city. All the Saint Kings stared at the 4 of them in surprise, as if they had just seen a ghost. None of them apart from Tianjian had thought that 3 saint rulers and a heaven saint master would be hiding in the depths of the city. Who are you? Why have you been hiding beneath the city? Speak, what were you doing down there? A Saint King of Mercenary City returned to his senses and immediately roared at them with a glare. Tianjian raised his hand to stop the expert who wanted to capture the 4 of them. He stared at them and asked, "Do you know what's happened down there?" Ming Dong, Yang Ling, Changyang Zhu Yunkong, and Huang Tianba were all confused as well. They had been cultivating all good and well underground, yet they were suddenly roused by Shaoling. Before they could understand what was going on, they were suddenly sent above ground, without any clue as to what had happened. Great Elder, the 4 of them have managed to get beneath the city through some unknown method, and who knows what they've done. I'm thinking that the sudden changes of the city are directly connected to them. Please look into this, Great Elder, said a Saint King of Mercenary City in a heavy voice as he glared at the 4 of them with hostility evident in his eyes. Tianjian shook his head, this has nothing to do with them. I may know a little as to why these changes have happened. What? The Great Elder knows the reason? Another Saint King stared at Tianjian in surprise. At this moment, another several dozen Saint Kings appeared. The independent Saint Kings had all arrived and all became stunned by the ruined city. All of them stared at it blankly with shock plastered across their faces. Tianjian gazed at the people of the protector clans and asked in a heavy voice, "Everyone, do you still remember the matter that I had discussed with you when I invited you to Mercenary City several years ago?" "Of course we remember." "Great Elder, was that actually true? Is there really a passage to another world sealed beneath the city? And that the other world is so powerful that just the number of people who have surpassed Saint Emperor exceeds 10? A Saint King from a protector clan asked in a heavy voice. His complexion was horrible. All the people of the protector clans had heard that there was a seal beneath the city. However, the matter just seemed far too unrealistic. They all chose not to believe it before personally witnessing it, treating it as a baseless rumor. However, they could not help but believe the story a little more now that the most powerful city on the continent had suffered such great changes. What? There's a passage seal beneath Mercenary City, just the number of people that has surpassed Saint Emperor exceeds 10? How is that possible? A few Saint Kings who had not heard of the matter before immediately revealed a different expression. They were all frightened by the power of the world of Forsaken Saints. There was only 3 Saint Emperors on the Tian Yuan continent right now. How were they supposed to repel the world of Forsaken Saints if they really were that powerful? Even if the 4 great races gathered together, all they would be in for was a slaughter. At this moment, the energy within the black tunnel leading to the foreign world abnormally churned deep beneath the city. It caused the surrounding space to tremble in an extremely unstable manner. The ceiling formation had already become visible and every single thread of the formation shone with a dazzling light, radiating with terrifying energy that filled the entire space. It was like a huge net, stretched across the entrance. Xiaoling hovered in the center of the formation as her bright eyes flickered. She nervously stared at the formation before her while her young face was filled with fear. She seemed extremely pitiful. Oh no, oh no. Master's seal is about to be broken. What do I do? Just what do I do? I can't last much longer. Brother, where are you? I'm so scared. Xiaoling hovered all by herself underground as she sobbed. Brother's too weak, so even if he's here, he can't help me. Master, where are you? Master, come out quick, I can't guard this seal much longer. This person is too powerful. Boo-hoo, Master, where are you? Don't abandon me. Xiaoling could not help but burst into tears as soon as her master was mentioned. Her relationship with Mo Tianyun was like a daughter and her father. Mo Tianyun's disappearance to her was like a 3-year-old child losing both her parents. Chapter 1263, Spirit King. An extremely vast world existed on the other side of the seal beneath Mercenary City. It was so great that even if the Beast God continent, the Sea Realm, the Tian Yuan continent and the Wasteland continent were combined, they would not even fill half of all the space that existed. The energy of the world there was extremely abundant as well, far more abundant than on the Tian Yuan continent, and most importantly, that vast world possessed origin energy that had vanished from this world for countless years. It was also rich in resources, so the entire place seemed perfect. Probably the only downside was that the sun of that world was blood red. It possessed the scarlet color of human viscera, radiating with endless light. It dyed the entire place blood red, adding a malevolent feeling to the entire world. There were not many Saint Kings on the Tian Yuan continent. Even with the entire world in perspective, including all the Saint Kings who always remained hidden away, there was no more than 1,000 at most. As for Saint Emperors, they were even rarer. With the Tian Yuan continent, the Sea Realm, and the Beast God continent combined, there was only 9. Yet in the blood-red world, Saint Kings could be seen everywhere. The number had reached a stunning level, and even the number of Saint Emperors outnumbered all the Saint Kings on the Tian Yuan continent. A huge mountain range that spanned an area of several million square kilometers stood in the center of that blood-red world. It was known as the World Mountains, the greatest mountain range in the world as well as the most terrifying forbidden ground. Not only were there countless powerful vicious beasts, there were also many unknown dangers of various origins on the World Mountains. Even Saint Emperors could only move around on the very outskirts, since entering the general region would basically lead to death. Without any exaggeration, the general region of the mountains was a grave for Saint Emperors. The general region was not even the most terrifying place either. The most terrifying place was the center of the mountain range, where a huge mountain over 10 kilometers tall stood. The mountain stood like a pillar that was holding up the vast sky of the world. It was shrouded by a faint layer of red mist, obscuring the body of the mountain and making it even more mysterious. The space halfway up the mountain was extremely unstable. It would twist violently and cracks of various sizes would form from time to time. These cracks would come in contact with the cliff face of the mountain itself from time to time, and rocks would often silently vanish, without even leaving behind a pile of dust. It was extremely terrifying. Approaching the huge mountain would be stepping into the central region of the mountain ranges, which was also known as the depths of the world mountains. Even those that had surpassed Saint Emperor and reached the origin realm needed to tread carefully in the depths. If they were sucked away by a spatial crack due to carelessness, even those of the origin realm could die. Throughout history, the depths of the mountain range had devoured the lives of many experts at the origin realm, which was why the mountain range had become a forbidden region where even experts of the origin realm dared not to set foot without considerable thought. But at this very moment, a large group of people had gathered on the peak of the greatest mountain in the mountain range. There was over 500 people, and they all wore the same black clothes. An odd, round symbol was present on all the black clothes, and in the center of the symbol was a huge, majestic hall. This was an image of the sacred organization that ruled the world, the symbol of the Sacred Spirit Hall. The Sacred Spirit Hall was like the imperial palace of this blood-red world. It was the symbol of absolute authority. The group of people there were extremely powerful. They were all Saint Emperors, and there were quite a few peak Saint Emperors among them. Any single one of them would be enough to terrify the 10 protector clans if they were on the Tian Yuan continent. However, all of them currently held their breaths and stood there silently like statues. They did not move at all. At the very front of the group were over 40 experts of various ages who stood in a single line. They also waited silently. The presence that radiated from them casually was even greater than the presence of Saint Emperors. If their auras were equivalent to an elephant, then the presences of the Saint Emperors were like ants, extremely insignificant. They had all surpassed Saint Emperor and had reached the origin realm, and 8 of them were even at returnance. But without any exception, all of the origin realm experts hid their presences, standing there like statues. They all held their breaths as they stared at the man at the very front. Quite a few of them showed deep admiration and fear through their gazes. He was a black-robed and tall man. He stood there silently with his back to everyone, giving off a feeling that he was indomitable, as if he was the heavens and he ruled the lives of everyone else. Just looking at him felt like he had fused with the world, yet there was also the illusion that he stood above the world. By his side hovered a heavy, dark sword made of metal. The metal shone with a dark glimmer and radiated with a bright light. Although it was motionless, the great aura from the weapon actually made the 8 returnance experts behind him shiver inside. A pitch-black tunnel stood 1,000 meters in front of the black-robed man. The space in there pulsed and distorted in violent spasms. "Spirit King, will we be able to break through the seal to the other side this time?" a returnance expert asked at this moment. The man standing at the very front was the supreme ruler of the Sacred Spirit Hall. He was the one who held supreme power over this world, the Spirit King. The Spirit King was a legendary person within the world of Forsaken Saints. He possessed the greatest talent and greatest comprehension throughout all of history, reaching reciprocity in just a mere 8 centuries. He created powerful moves himself. When he had first set a foot in the reciprocity realm, he challenged the 3 other reciprocity experts of the world of Forsaken Saints. The first expert was at mid-reciprocity and was defeated in 10 moves by the Spirit King, who had just reached reciprocity. The second and third experts were at mid and late reciprocity respectively, but after an intense, 4-hour fight with the early reciprocity Spirit King, they both died to his blade. The 3 reciprocity experts were originally the rulers of the Sacred Spirit Hall. They were known as the three great spirit kings, but after they were all slain by the black-robed man, he himself became the spirit king. He became the spirit king of a new generation and the only spirit king of the world of forsaken saints. Although the new spirit king had only reached reciprocity recently and was still at early reciprocity, all the origin realm experts in the world believed he possessed the power to fight the weakest person who had attained godhood. The gap between the origin realm and godhood was as large as a chasm. It was not even comparable to the gap between Saint King and Saint Emperor, but rather the gap between the origin realm and sainthood would be more comparable. The current Spirit King possessed the power to fight an expert who had attained godhood at early reciprocity. Even if it was only the weakest expert at godhood, it was shocking enough. The person who came to our world and cast down this seal is indeed very strong. No wonder none of our origin realm experts were his opponent. The seal he had cast down between the two worlds can only be destroyed by someone at godhood. I easily destroyed the seal in our world before, probably because there was no one controlling it, but there's an origin realm expert on the other side supporting the seal right now, so it won't be destroyed easily, said the Spirit King. He spoke in an extremely nonchalant tone, but his voice carried a certain femininity. Although he was a man, his voice was extremely pleasant. Spirit King, will it fail again this time? An enchanting woman who seemed to be in her 20s gently asked. Her voice was filled with charm, as if it could suck away the souls of people. She was one of the 8 experts at returnance. Although there's an origin realm expert supporting the seal on the other side, I am confident I can get through the seal since I've come here today. Maintaining the seal will require a vast amount of energy. Let me waste that origin realm expert's energy first, and once they're running low, I'll use my seal breaking and break through the seal, said the Spirit King nonchalantly. At this moment, the space in the tunnel stabilized again. The space had been disrupted by his full-powered attack from earlier. A resplendent gleam of light immediately flashed through the Spirit King's eyes when he saw the space restabilize. The dark sword floating beside him immediately erupted with a dazzling silver light as an extremely powerful sword intent permeated the surroundings. Under the contamination of the powerful sword intent, the violent wind, the air, and even the abundant energy of the world in the surroundings became strands of invisible sword chi. Swish! The dark metal sword was surrounded by a coat of powerful silver light as it vanished into the tunnel in front of them as a white streak of light. Chapter 1264. The seal breaks. A resplendent gleam of light immediately flashed through the Spirit King's eyes when he saw the space restabilize. The dark sword floating beside him immediately erupted with a dazzling silver light as an extremely powerful sword intent permeated the surroundings. Under the contamination of the powerful sword intent, the violent wind, the air, and even the abundant energy of the world in the surroundings became strands of invisible sword chi. Swish! The dark metal sword was surrounded by a coat of powerful silver light as it vanished into the tunnel in front of them as a white streak of light. The tunnel between the world of Forsaken Saints and Mercenary City was filled with extremely violent streaks of energy, causing the space in it to become extremely unstable. The entire tunnel would distort from time to time. At this moment, a dazzling streak of white light flashed through the tunnel, moving extremely quick. This was the Spirit King's dark metal sword. The sword seemed completely ordinary and was not eye-catching in any particular way, but it possessed great power. The strength of the metal sword greatly surpassed the Emperor armaments on the Tianyuan continent, and even the Emperor armaments of the 10 Protector clans could not compare to it. The rather unstable space would begin to ripple violently wherever the sword passed by, but it was extremely tough, so it did not shatter. On the other side, the web-like seal covered the entrance of the tunnel. The metal sword passed through the spatial tunnel with an unstoppable force. It was coated by a radiant glow of silver light, striking the seal viciously. Boom! With a deafening boom, the sword struck the center of the seal and the great force turned the formation into a conical shape. Then, the sword erupted radiantly, producing rain-like droplets of energy that attacked the seal, violently destroying it. The seal immediately began to violently flicker and the energy that maintained it was consumed at an extremely terrifying rate. Xiaoling immediately became extremely nervous. She placed her hands on the seal as origin energy was rapidly channeled into the formation. She tried to maintain the final seal. However, the seal only managed to block the Spirit King's attack with great difficulty even after being supported by Xiaoling's own power. Although the seal was powerful, it was only enough to repel the attacks of experts in the origin realm. Once it encountered attacks at the level of godhood, even if it was from the weakest godhood expert, it would break for sure. Although the Spirit King was only in the origin realm, he possessed the power to rival the weakest expert who had obtained godhood, so the seal could not be maintained before his great strength. If it were not for Xiaoling's support, the seal probably would have been smashed through long ago. However, Xiaoling could not last much longer either, because the energy she had accumulated over countless years had almost been consumed. The metal sword was locked in a stalemate with the seal for several seconds before finally expending all the power it had and returning to the world of Forsaken Saints. Xiaoling became relieved, but when she discovered that all the energy in the underground space had been consumed, she immediately became terrified. She sobbed, "Oh no, oh no. There's no more energy to keep up the seal. What do I do? Master, where are you? Come back quick. If you don't return now, your seal will be destroyed by bad people. That bad person is so strong. I can't beat him. Master, come back quick." The Spirit King stood unmoving at the highest point of the world mountains, as if he was all that existed in that world. At this moment, the metal sword that had dulled emerged from the spatial tunnel. As if the sword was conscious, it flew into the Spirit King's hand without anyone's control. "It's time." At this moment, the Spirit King spoke in heavy voice. Suddenly, a supreme presence surged from him in all directions. He slowly hovered in the air, reaching an altitude of 10 meters as terrifying energy filled the surroundings. At that moment, he seemed to have become a mighty spirit. He gripped his sword as he stood there, causing the sky to tremble. The several dozen Origin Realm experts all looked at him from behind in fear. All of them could sense the incomparably vast pressure radiating from the Spirit King. Even the 8 Returnance experts were not exceptions. All of them felt that the Spirit King was invincible. Seal breaker. Suddenly, the Spirit King roared out as the pure origin energy without him surged into the metal sword, immediately causing it to erupt with an unprecedented brightness and causing it loudly resonate. Afterward, the Spirit King stabbed out with a flash. The strike possessed an indescribable profoundness. With that single strike, the world dulled while the air stopped moving. Time seemed to have halted, and even the surrounding space oscillated with a ripple. The Spirit King stabbed the metal sword at the tunnel with a speed that was difficult to observe with the naked eye, attacking the seal on the other side again. When the seal came in contact with the metal sword, an extremely profound energy began to spread out. It was like poison. As soon as it came in contact with the seal, the powerful seal began to dissolve at a visible rate. Xiaoling was surprised when she saw this. She poured everything she had into the seal, but no matter how hard she tried, she could not slow down the rate at which the seal collapsed. Boom! A few seconds later, the seal finally shattered with a rumble, causing the entire underground space to violently tremble. Xiaoling stared blankly at the broken seal while her face became extremely pale. She was filled with fear as fat tears uncontrollably rolled down her cheeks as she broke into tears. She sobbed, "It's done for. It's all over. The seal's been broken. The seal's been broken. Master, where are you? Come back, the seal's been broken. The seal's been broken. What do I do?" The moment the seal shattered, Mercenary City suffered the most powerful jolt as well. Whole regions of Earth collapsed as the cracks, which crisscrossed the ground, all expanded to the width of a meter. All the structures in the city had collapsed, including Imo Tianyan's sculpture at the center. All the experts of Mercenary City, including the ones who had hurried over from various places, watched the tragedy unfold with sunken faces. At this moment, no one was able to lighten up, including the Protector clans who were envious of Mercenary City for obtaining a Saint Emperor. This was because Tianjian had already told all the Saint Kings present the information he had learned from Jianchen. If it was any other time, none of them would have believed such an unrealistic matter, but the collapse of Mercenary City was the best evidence without a doubt. It was no longer up to whether they believed it or not. If the seal to the world of Forsaken Saints really had been destroyed and the experts there launched an invasion, how was the Tianyuan continent supposed to repel them with their puny strength? This was definitely a calamity for the Tianyuan continent that might even affect the entire world. The dark, metal sword returned to the Spirit King's side again back in the world of Forsaken Saints. It hovered quietly by his side as the Spirit King stared at the spatial tunnel in front of him. He finally showed a smile of delight. Spirit King, may I ask if the seal on the other side has been destroyed? The alluring, returnance woman nervously asked. The Spirit King slowly turned around. He seemed to be roughly in his 30s, and he was not handsome at all. His appearance was extremely ordinary. His eyebrows were sharp, like swords, while his face was weathered, having survived through wind and storms of blood. I've already destroyed the seal on the other side, but the space in the tunnel has become extremely unstable after several attacks from me. It's filled with chaotic streams of space, so we can't pass through it. We can only go after it has stabilized, answered the Spirit King. With that, the Origin Realm experts immediately beamed in joy. One of the returnant's old men excitedly said, "The Spirit King really is the hope of our world, to have completed the world's wish from so many years ago all by himself. Over 200 years ago, our world gave birth to 5 reciprocity Spirit Kings, but they had failed to smash through the seal even after working together. The current Spirit King possesses the power to rival all 5 of them all by himself. The Spirit King is the strongest expert of the world of Forsaken Saints in all of history." The Spirit King did not react in any particular way to the old man's compliments. His expression remained as nonchalant as before. He said, "Origin Realm experts will bring very great pressure to the spatial tunnel if they enter, so they can only pass through once the space has completely stabilized and the tunnel has been reinforced. However, experts below the Origin Realm are not restricted by this. All we need to do is wait for the streams of space in there to calm down. The weaker the person, the safer they are. One of you stay here and keep guard. We'll send some people through to investigate the situation on the other side first. Do not forget our intentions." "Yes, Spirit King," all the Origin Realm experts replied at the same time. Afterward, the Spirit King flew down the mountain with his sword on his back. He completely ignored the spatial cracks that could even claim the lives of those in the Origin Realm halfway down the mountain. Chapter 1265, Countermeasures. Several hundred Saint Kings currently hovered above Mercenary City. Every single one of them had their eyebrows furrowed tightly with extremely stern expressions. After they learned that a tunnel to another world was truly sealed beneath the city, they all contacted every Saint King they knew, leading to even more hurrying over. In the end, the Saint Kings gathered at Mercenary City only increased. This was because all of them could feel that this was something significant, directly tied to the safety of the continent. It was far more severe than the invasion of the Beast God continent before. Every single one of them was responsible for protecting the continent, even if many of them were independent. "Great Elder, what should we do now? And can that seal block the attacks from the experts of the world of Forsaken Saints or not?" A great elder of a protector clan asked in worry. With so many people, all they could do was gather there. They did not even possess the strength to take any action, let alone know about the situation of the seal. "I don't know about the situation underground either. Even if this land has lost the protection of the barrier's strength, it's still not a place we can just barge into. We can only ask the spirit of the barrier to gain a detailed understanding," replied Tianjian with a heavy voice. "Does the barrier spirit still exist now that the barrier of the city is gone?" A 9th heavenly layer Saint King asked in surprise. He was also a great elder of a protector clan. No one else knew the true identity of the barrier spirit on the present continent other than Jian Chen and the heavenly enchantress. Even Tianjian did not know. All of them believed that the barrier spirit was a spirit that had been born from the barrier and was dependent on the barrier. With so many years, the barrier spirit has always guarded the seal beneath Mercenary City. The barrier is gone now, but I am almost certain that the barrier spirit still exists. I just don't know how to contact it, said Tianjian. But, just as he finished speaking, a girl's cries of sorrow suddenly rang out. Her cries were extremely sorrowful, and when all the Saint Kings heard her sobs, their expressions all changed, because they could not find the source despite hearing them clearly. It seemed to have originated from nowhere. Have the experts of the world of Forsaken Saints come? The ancestral emperor of the Felicity Empire heavily asked. His expression became extremely horrible. He could sense the person's strength just from the sobs. No. It's the barrier spirit. Tianjian cried out as he beamed. As expected, a girl who seemed to be 12 or 13 years old slowly appeared in the air as soon as Tianjian finished speaking. When she first appeared, she was just a faint image, but her figure started to rapidly consolidate at a visible rate. Within just a few seconds, she had become completely tangible. She seemed fleshy, far more realistic than any time Jian Chen had seen her. This time, Xiaoling did not hide her existence. Her figure was completely revealed, allowing everyone to see her clearly as she constantly rubbed away her tears. Everyone turned their gazes toward her and became filled with curiosity and shock. Including Tianjian, this was the first time anyone here had seen Xiaoling. What had taken a lot of them by surprise was that the barrier spirit was actually such a cute girl. Barrier spirit, what's the situation underground? Is the seal still whole? Tianjian nervously inquired. It's broken, it's broken. The seal's been broken by the bad people on the other side. Boo-hoo, Master's seal has been destroyed. Oh no, what do I do? Xiaoling sobbed. She was filled with a sense of helplessness. The complexions of all the people present became extremely horrible, and some of them even paled slightly. Barrier spirit, what's the strength of the world of Forsaken Saints? A great elder from a protector clan asked a heavy question. I don't know, but the person who broke the seal is so strong. He's at least at reciprocity. I can't beat him. Xiaoling became terrified as soon as they mentioned the Spirit King. Reciprocity? Is that a realm beyond Saint Emperor? An independent Saint King mumbled. Even the 10 protector clans, which had existed for many years, did not have too great of an understanding regarding the cultivation realms beyond Saint Emperor. Master said that above sainthood is the origin realm. The origin realm has 3 smaller levels, which are receival, returnance, and reciprocity. The person who broke the seal is at reciprocity at the very least, but I'm only at returnance, so how can I beat him? Don't look down on the strength between returnance and reciprocity. Master said that the difference between the two is like Saint King and Saint Emperor, Xiaoling explained. All the people present immediately gasped. All of them understood exactly how vast the difference between Saint King and Saint Emperor was. The difference was as immense as the earth and the sky. They could not be compared. What? How is the world of Forsaken Saints so powerful? If we compare those who have just surpassed Saint Emperor to Saint Rulers, doesn't that mean that Saint Emperors are just Heaven's Saint Masters? And we Saint Kings would only be equivalent to Earth Saint Masters. Using several hundred Earth Saint Masters to fight against a Saint Emperor? What is this joke? An independent Saint Kings cried out in disbelief. The disparity was just far too great, so great that it was unimaginable. Xiaoling worriedly said, the tunnel has already been opened, and without much longer, there will be people from the other side who will come over. Master once said that he entered that world all by himself and killed a lot of experts. I don't know if those people hold a grudge for Master. If they do, they'll definitely come to kill us once they come over. We better find something to do quick. Everyone was speechless and moaned inside. The world of Forsaken Saints even had experts who stood at the apex of the origin realm, so no one was certain whether they had others at receival and returnance. Even in ancient times when the Tianyuan continent was most prosperous, they would not be their opponents, let alone now. The city lord left behind an extremely tough divine hall in Mercenary City back then. I wonder if it'll be useful, Tianjian said with a deep voice. The divine hall's power was evident. It could even kill Saint Emperors, but Tianjian was not confident about experts of the Origin Realm because the divine hall had never been used against them before, so it was obviously impossible for him to know whether it could block their attacks or not. Xiao Ling's eyes immediately lit up. She excitedly responded, "Oh yeah, we still have the divine hall that master left us. The divine hall is very tough. Probably even I can't break through it. I just don't know if it can block attacks from experts at reciprocity, but there's no other choice now. Quickly move master's divine hall to guard the entrance." "Okay, I'll go refine the divine hall immediately." Tianjian left with that. He knew that time was very tight, and he needed to refine the divine hall in the shortest amount of time possible. There's also Fairy Hao Yu's Bright Moon Divine Hall. The divine hall is extraordinarily tough. Even Saint Emperors cannot destroy it. We can borrow the divine hall to guard the tunnel. Although I don't know if it can stop them, but it'll be better than nothing, said a great elder of a protector clan. Chapter 1266, Violet Cloud Peaches. As soon as someone mentioned that they wanted to use the Bright Moon Divine Hall to guard the entrance of the tunnel, Changyang Zhu Yunxiao's face immediately sank. The Divine Hall only belonged to Yu Yu, and Yu Yu was Jian Chen's fiancé. If they really managed to obtain the Divine Hall to plug the entrance, getting it back would not be easy. This was because the Bright Moon Divine Hall was also a structure that even Saint Emperors could not smash through. In order for the people of the Protector clans to maintain their authority on the continent, they could not let such a powerful divine hall exist. The people of the Protector clans dared not to touch Yu Yu before. First, because they would not be able to do anything to her if she hid in the divine hall. Second, Jian Chen was beside her as well as 3 powerful magical beasts that stood on equal ground with Saint Emperors. As a result, the Protector clans could only helplessly watch the powerful divine hall end up with Yu Yu without being able to do anything. However, the situation was completely different now. The existence of the world of Forsaken Saints was an extremely great threat to the Tianyuan continent. It could even be described as a disaster that could impact the entire world. Using this as an opportunity to take away the divine hall was all in the name of the greater good, so no one could say anything. And if the divine hall was destroyed, the people of the Protector clans wouldn't mind that happening. However, the people who would end up losing out would be his side. Changyang Zhu Yunxiao made up his mind to prevent this at all costs. The Bright Moon Divine Hall is indeed extremely tough and the materials used to construct it are extremely rare, forged from substances of the moon. However, Fairy Hao Yu, who crafted it, was only a peak Saint Emperor at most. She did not reach the Origin Realm. Her divine hall probably can block the attacks of Saint Emperors at most, and it'll be useless before those of the Origin Realm. A great elder of the Yangji sect sneered when he heard that. We're currently facing a devastating threat. No matter what it is, we will try it as long as there's a sliver of hope of stopping the experts from the world of Forsaken Saints. We, the 10 Protector clans, have quite a few divine halls, but all of them can only block the attacks of Saint Kings. They're completely useless before Saint Emperors, and with the entire continent in perspective, only the Divine Hall of Mercenary City and the Bright Moon Divine Hall can perhaps block attacks from experts of the Origin Realm. That's right. We can no longer talk about personal benefits or losses at this moment. The Tianyuan continent is facing danger and every single person is responsible for its safety. Brother, I'll visit Flames City with you and borrow the Bright Moon Divine Hall. If they don't comply, we can only react correspondingly, said a great elder of the Yiyun sect righteously. He seemed like he was solemn on the surface, but he sneered inside. Jian Chen, you killed a great elder of my Yiyun sect and completely embarrassed us. We might not be able to take revenge on you, but you cannot stop us from taking away your girl's divine hall. The great elder of the Yangji sect immediately beamed now that he obtained the support of a great elder from the Yiyun sect. He looked around and said, "Everyone, may I ask if there is anyone else willing to come with us to Flame City, to borrow the Bright Moon Divine Hall and safeguard the Tian Yuan continent?" An independent Saint King stepped forward and sternly said, "I may have secluded myself as a hermit and never took part in any conflicts, but this matter directly relates to the fate of the Tian Yuan continent, so I obviously cannot stand down. Allow me to accompany you. If the Bright Moon Divine Hall can stop the invasion of the world of Forsaken Saints, the owner of the Divine Hall will commit a service of great merit." A few other Saint Kings stepped forward after him. Almost all of them were independent cultivators who stayed isolated in desolate regions like hermits. In the end, the Yangji sect and the Yiyuan sect sent 2 Saint Kings each to travel to Mercenary City with another 5 independent Saint Kings, for a total of 9 people. Changyang Zhu Yunshao panicked inside when he saw this. Just when he wanted to say something, he was stopped by Changyang Zhu Shao through a message, "Yunshao, this is not the time for you to stop them. The people of the Yangji sect and the Yiyuan sect are very biased against Jianshen, so if you want to stop them, be careful about getting dragged into it as well as becoming a public target of scorn." Changyang Zhu Yunshao fell silent and sighed inside. He wanted to help you keep the Divine Hall very much, but he could do nothing. The Grand Elder of Mercenary City said, "Everyone, the world of Forsaken Saints doesn't just pose a threat to our Tian Yuan continent. Even the sea race, the magical beasts, and the 100 races will face a similar threat. I believe we should send envoys to all 3 races with a request for reinforcements. Although our strength is extremely insignificant compared to the world of Forsaken Saints, we need to stop them from coming over with everything we have." The Grand Elder cannot be more correct, but we are not on good terms with the 3 other races. We've even fallen out a little with the magical beasts and the 100 races, so I believe we should think through this some more before deciding, said a great elder of a protector clan. "Then please come into the miniature world of our Mercenary City. We can discuss countermeasures there." Jian Shen had no clue that the seal beneath Mercenary City had been destroyed since he was in the Xianhuang microcosm. He was currently traveling with Tai Ta, making their way to the center. He came across a few regions with some vegetation. Every single region with vegetation would contain springs of life as well as Xianhuang beasts. Jianshen would take half the spring water from every region as well as the essence that had been nurtured by the spring of life. The essence was the true object of value. It was extremely beneficial to the soul, and the sea goddess required this as a material to reconstruct her body. Along the way, more and more spring water accumulated in Jianshen's artifact space. It had exceeded 40,000 liters. Half of it was at the first grade of the immortal tier. Over 10,000 liters was of the second while the remaining amount was of the third. Third grade of the immortal tier was the highest quality spring water Jianshen had come across so far. Other than the spring water, Jianshen had found many various heavenly resources as well. There were ginsengs, ganodermas, knotwood, and so on from the ones he could recognize. Every single one of them had exceeded 100,000 years in maturity, and all of them had been tainted with faint Xianhuang qi due to growing in the Xianhuang microcosm, allowing them to increase in value. Jianshen had come across over 10 immortal tier heavenly resources that he had never seen or heard before, but they were of the second grade at most. Jianshen had also learned that the sword spirits did not care about these heavenly resources at all. The only reason they got him to collect them was because they would be useful to him. Jianshen also came across another 3 comprehension tea trees and removed all their leaves. Unfortunately, all of them were of the first grade. Other than that, Jianshen had slain several dozen class 7 and 8 Xianhuang beasts and collected the energy crystals that corresponded to monster cores. Although Jianshen had only spent 7 days in the Xianhuang microcosm, Jianshen was extremely satisfied with what he had obtained in that time frame. Tai Ta was the same. He had always been smiling in those days and could not even close his mouth since he had also obtained several dozen energy crystals, all of them of the 7th or 8th class. When Jianshen crossed several dozen kilometers of barren land and arrived at another region of life, he discovered a 3-meter tall peach tree growing there. It was covered with fist-sized peaches, violet in color. All of them were actually the exact same size. Master, these are immortal peaches, the violet cloud peaches. It only bears a single fruit every 9,000 years, and it can only bear 108 peaches throughout its life. Consuming the peach can directly increase the level of cultivation of the person. The highest quality peaches are of the 9th grade in the immortal tier. They can increase your level of cultivation by 4,500 years worth. The peaches in front of you are only of the 1st grade, and consuming one of them can only increase your cultivation by 500 years. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.